There is a kind of philosophy that does not speak loudly, does not argue, and does not demand attention. It is quiet, like the breath you forget you are breathing, or the stillness of water before a stone is dropped into it. This philosophy whispers beneath your daily noise, offering not answers but mirrors. It does not ask you to conquer the world, only to sit with yourself long enough to notice what you are. Tonight we will walk together into this stillness, letting silence teach you who you really are. When you look into a mirror, you expect to see your reflection, a simple surface bouncing back your face, your posture, the way you hold yourself. But philosophy reminds us that mirrors do more than copy. They expose, they show not just what is there, but what is missing. The mirror is silent, yet it asks, who is this you are looking at? We live most of our lives avoiding this question. We rush into routines, pile layers of busyness over our faces, and surround ourselves with noise. In the mirror, though, there is no distraction. There is only the quiet confrontation with yourself, the lines in your skin, the small tiredness in your eyes, the expressions that have hardened from habits long repeated. The mirror does not flatter or lie, it reflects. And yet, even this reflection is not truly you. It is only light bouncing off a surface, an image delayed by a fraction of time. The you inside, the one who is thinking and feeling as you stare, is hidden. The philosopher sees this paradox and pauses. The mirror shows everything visible, yet it cannot reveal what is most essential. To face yourself is not to see your skin or your hair, but to notice the quiet tremors of thought that stir beneath. Socrates once said that the unexamined life is not worth living. The mirror, in its stillness, insists on examination. But you do not need philosophy textbooks to begin. All you need is a pause. Stand in front of your own reflection, and listen not to what it says, because it says nothing, but to what arises in your mind as you gaze. The nervous flicker of self-criticism, the longing to look different, the soft surprise at how much time has passed since you last noticed yourself fully. Each of these thoughts is part of the mirror's dialogue. The inner mirror is not made of glass. It is the one you carry everywhere, the mind that reflects on its own movements. When you stop in the middle of a busy day, and suddenly see yourself from outside, as if you were watching a stranger, that is the inner mirror at work. It reflects not appearance but awareness, and in that awareness lies the seed of self-understanding. But it is not always comfortable. Quiet philosophy does not promise comfort. It promises honesty, and honesty with yourself can sting. You may see how often you chase approval, how quickly you turn away from your own doubts, how rarely you sit still. The mirror does not judge you, though. It simply holds the image. It waits. You are the one who chooses to run or to stay. There is a strange freedom in looking steadily at what is there. Just as water becomes clear when left undisturbed, the mind becomes clearer when it dares to see without flinching. The ripples calm, the reflection sharpens, and suddenly you recognize something in yourself you had been avoiding. You see the patterns that repeat, the stories you tell yourself, the feelings you bury, and with that recognition comes the first step toward change. Not dramatic, not loud, but gentle, like dawn slowly warming the edge of night. The inner mirror teaches patience. You cannot demand it to show what you want. You must wait, and in that waiting you begin to understand that knowing yourself is not a one-time revelation. It is a practice, a quiet ritual of reflection. Each day you stand before the mirror of your mind, and each day it shows you something slightly different. The image shifts as you shift. To understand yourself is not to reach a final answer. It is to return, again and again, to the mirror. Not with fear or judgment, but with curiosity. What do I see today? What truth is waiting in this silence? In this way, the inner mirror is not just a reflection but an invitation to live more awake, more aware, more honestly. And so, you breathe, you look, you learn. Silence is not the absence of sound. It is a presence of its own, a subtle atmosphere that holds you when the world finally stops speaking. If you sit in a room where no voices, no machines, and no distractions intrude, you begin to notice silence in layers. At first, it feels like emptiness, perhaps even uncomfortable, but as minutes pass, you begin to sense its weight, its texture. The silence is not blank. It is alive. It breathes with you, and when you learn to listen to it, you begin to hear yourself more clearly than ever before. We spend our days avoiding silence. We fill rooms with music, conversations, the hum of screens, the endless scroll of voices we borrow from others. This is not wrong, but it is incomplete. For without silence, we never hear what our own mind is saying beneath the surface. The philosopher notices this with a kind of quiet alarm. How can we claim to know ourselves if we never allow silence to speak? To listen to silence is to recognize that your mind, left without distraction, begins to wander through its hidden corridors. At first, it may feel restless. The silence reflects back all the unspoken worries you carry, unfinished conversations, regrets, small shames, lingering hopes. The room feels louder with these thoughts than with any sound. And here lies the first truth silence teaches. It is not the outer noise we are afraid of losing, but the inner noise we are afraid of facing. This is why so many traditions, Stoic, Buddhist, Christian, and others, have treated silence as sacred. The monk in his cell, the sage on his mountain, the wanderer in the desert. Each of them learns that silence is not empty, but full. It is a teacher. It does not lecture. It does not explain. It simply opens a space where you can no longer hide behind distractions. The mind, once unmasked, begins to reveal itself. But how do you listen to silence? At first it may seem impossible. You might close your eyes, but you still hear the faint ticking of a clock, the distant hum of traffic, the rhythm of your own breath. Yet, if you stay, if you resist the urge to break the silence with a phone or a thoughtless word, you begin to notice something stranger. The silence is not broken by these sounds. It contains them. The clock ticks within silence. The car moves through it. Your breath belongs to it. Silence is the canvas on which all sounds appear. To listen to it is to listen to the background of existence itself. When you give yourself fully to this listening, you begin to change. You start to notice the difference between noise that fills you and quiet that frees you. Noise demands your attention, drags your thoughts outward, insists on constant reaction. Silence, on the other hand, invites you inward. It does not pull or push. It simply opens a doorway. In that doorway, you begin to see what you normally avoid. The way your thoughts loop endlessly, the way you rehearse arguments that never happened, the way you dream of futures that dissolve before you reach them. And yet, silence does not condemn you for this. It does not shout back or argue. It simply waits, like a patient friend who knows you will eventually tire of your own noise. When you finally stop fighting the stillness, when you allow yourself to sit quietly long enough, something begins to shift. Your thoughts slow. The background chatter fades. What remains is not emptiness but presence, a steady awareness of simply being here. This is where silence becomes music. Think of a piece of music you love. It is not just the notes that move you, but the pauses between them. Without silence, melody becomes chaos. The rests, the spaces, the suspensions, these are what give music its power. The same is true in your life. Without silence, your days become an endless blur of motion. With silence, even the smallest action, a sip of water, a glance out the window, becomes rich with meaning. Philosophy calls us to return to this awareness. The Stoics practiced daily reflection, not in noise but in quiet. Eastern traditions spoke of meditation, where silence becomes a mirror of the mind. Modern psychology even affirms what the ancients knew. Silence reduces anxiety, lowers the storm of thought, and restores the nervous system. But beyond utility, silence carries a deeper gift. It allows you to encounter yourself, raw and unadorned, without the armor of constant distraction. At first, this can be frightening. To sit in silence is to feel exposed, as if all the layers of noise you once used to define yourself, the job, the relationships, the roles you play, suddenly fall away. What remains? Only you, as you are. But in this simplicity lies the beginning of peace. For once you learn you can survive the silence, you realize you are not dependent on constant distraction to exist. You discover that your own company is enough. There is a story told of Pythagoras who required his students to spend years in silence before they were permitted to speak. Why? Because silence teaches listening, and listening teaches wisdom. When you no longer rush to fill every gap with words, you begin to hear more, not only of others, but of yourself. The quiet voice of intuition, the soft pull of conscience, the hidden desires that noise had drowned out. Silence makes these audible again. Listening to silence does not mean abandoning the world. It means carrying a small chamber of quiet within you wherever you go. Even in the busiest city, even in the loudest room, you can retreat inward and listen to that stillness, if only for a moment. And in that moment, you remember that life is not defined by constant chatter, but by the spaces that allow meaning to emerge. So tonight, as you rest, let silence speak. Do not be afraid if it feels heavy at first. That heaviness is simply the weight of truths long ignored. Stay with it, breathe with it, and soon you will notice the silence has changed shape. It no longer presses against you but holds you gently, like a blanket. It becomes not a void, but a presence. And within that presence, you begin to understand yourself more deeply than words could ever allow. Stillness is rarely something we think of as heavy. We imagine weight as belonging to stone, metal, burdens carried on our backs. But if you've ever sat in a room where the air was thick with silence, where no movement stirred the curtains, where your own breathing seemed too loud, you know that stillness can press on you like a physical force. It has a gravity. It anchors you in place, demanding that you notice. The weight of stillness is not crushing, but it is undeniable, and to encounter it is to discover both resistance and release within yourself. At first, stillness feels unnatural. The human body was built to move, the mind designed to chase. You carry centuries of restless ancestors in your blood. Hunters, wanderers, builders. To sit without movement is to interrupt this ancient momentum. The body twitches, the thoughts scatter, the itch to check or reach or do grows unbearable. The first lesson of stillness is that restlessness rises not because of the world, but because of you. The weight is felt inside before it ever belongs to the air around you. The philosopher recognizes this resistance, not as failure, but as doorway. Stillness weighs on you precisely because you are unaccustomed to carrying it. The muscles of patience have grown weak. The discipline of waiting has withered. Yet, just as the body becomes stronger when lifting heavy stones, the mind grows steadier when it accepts the weight of stillness. Each moment you endure without fleeing is a kind of training, and with practice, the heaviness changes. It no longer feels like burden but like grounding. Think of a river. When it rushes, the water is chaotic, noisy, difficult to cross. But when it pulls into stillness, it gains depth. The surface becomes clear enough to reflect the sky. The weight of water is no less. In fact, it is more. But in that heaviness, there is also transparency. Stillness in your life works the same way. It may press down, but it also allows you to see more clearly through yourself. This is why so many traditions treat stillness as sacred. In meditation, you are taught not to chase thoughts, but to let them settle like dust falling through air. In prayer, you are asked not to fill the silence with demands, but to listen. In philosophy, the greatest insights come not in the heat of debate, but in the quiet moments after, when reflection takes root. The weight of stillness, then, is not punishment but invitation. It is the force that holds you in place long enough to notice what is real. Yet, for many, this weight feels unbearable. In stillness, you meet yourself without distraction. Your regrets rise like ghosts, your hidden fears echo, your long-ignored doubts knock loudly at the door of your mind. No wonder we avoid it. Movement, noise, conversation, these become shields against the heaviness of facing what we've hidden. The philosopher, however, suggests a different approach. Do not flee, do not fight, let the weight rest on your shoulders. Learn what it has to teach you. Because here is the secret: stillness is not empty. When you let it settle, when you allow the weight to press fully, you discover it contains more than you expected. Beneath the discomfort lies a kind of richness, clarity, awareness, even peace. What once felt like a stone pressing down becomes a foundation you can stand on. In the quiet gravity of stillness, you find that the ground beneath you is stronger than you thought. There is a kind of paradox here. We chase lightness, we long to be free, yet freedom often comes not from escaping weight, but from accepting it. To sit in stillness is to realize that the weight you feel is not crushing you but anchoring you. It keeps you from drifting endlessly through noise and distraction. It holds you steady so that you can finally see where you are. The philosopher would say, in learning to bear stillness, you learn to bear yourself. Imagine sitting at dusk, the world dimming, the air cool, no sound but your breath. At first, the stillness feels heavy. Your mind resists, turning over old worries. But slowly you notice something shift. The weight does not vanish, but you stop struggling against it. It becomes a kind of companion, a steady hand on your shoulder, reminding you that there is no need to run. This is the gift hidden inside the weight of stillness, the permission to stop. And when you stop, truly stop, you realize that the heaviness you feared was not silence itself, but the energy you wasted in avoiding it. Once you surrender, stillness ceases to be a burden. It becomes grounding, like the earth beneath your feet. It reminds you that not every moment must be filled, not every second must be chased. Sometimes, the deepest wisdom arrives only when you allow yourself to carry nothing but the weight of being here. The philosopher does not deny that stillness is difficult. It requires courage to face what emerges when the world is quiet. But within this heaviness lies freedom. For once you know you can carry the weight of stillness, you also know you can face yourself, your regrets, your fears, your unspoken truths. You are no longer a stranger to your own mind. You have sat with it, borne its gravity, and discovered that it did not break you, it grounded you. So tonight, let stillness press upon you. Do not resist. Feel its weight settle over you like a heavy blanket, warm and unhurried. Let it remind you that beneath all noise, beneath all movement, there is a core of being that does not need to run. There is strength in this heaviness, a quiet strength that teaches you not to escape yourself, but to rest within yourself. This is the philosophy of stillness, not escape, not emptiness, but the grounding presence of simply being here. Memory is a peculiar thing. It feels solid, like stone tablets carved with the details of your life. But when you look closely, you realize memory is not a record. It is a shadow. It flickers and bends, shifting with the angle of your mind, sometimes lengthening, sometimes vanishing altogether. The shadows of memory tell us who we believe we are, yet they never quite hold still long enough to be truth. To understand yourself through philosophy is to walk carefully among these shadows, noticing how they move, how they color the present, how they whisper stories that may or may not be real. At first, you trust memory completely. You recall your childhood room, the face of a friend, the sound of your first heartbreak. These seem undeniable, etched into you. But silence and reflection reveal how fragile memory truly is. Neuroscience shows us that every recollection is a reconstruction. Each time you remember, you rebuild the past from fragments, like a painter layering brushstrokes on canvas, and each time details shift. A color darkens, a word changes, a face softens. The memory you trust is not fixed but remade. It is a shadow, following you, but never the same shape twice. This truth unsettles us. If memory is unstable, then who are we? We often define ourselves by what we remember. The child we once were, the decisions we made, the triumphs and failures we carry. But if memory is only shadow, then identity becomes slippery too. The philosopher does not despair at this, but takes it as invitation. Perhaps to understand yourself is not to cling to memory as fact, but to recognize memory as story, one you tell yourself in order to navigate the present. Shadows do not lie, but they do not show the whole. They suggest, hint, gesture towards something larger. Still, shadows matter. Walk down a street at dusk, and you will notice how shadows stretch across the ground, shaping your perception of space. They may look long and distorted, but they reveal the presence of light behind them. So too with memory. Even if the details shift, the presence of memory points to the weight of experience. You may not recall the exact words spoken in a painful moment, but you remember the ache it left. That ache is real. The shadow reveals the shape of what once was, even if it cannot give you the full picture. Philosophy asks us to sit with this paradox. Memory is unreliable, yet memory shapes us. Shadows cannot be held, yet they guide our steps. To understand yourself, you must learn to look at your memories not as photographs but as living impressions. They are colored by who you are now, tinted by emotions, bent by perspective. The memory of your childhood self will look different when you are 20 than when you are 60. The shadow shifts because the light has moved. This is not failure but function. If memories were fixed, they would trap you. They would lock you into old versions of yourself, unable to grow. Shadows remind you that the past is not a prison, but a presence, something that accompanies you, sometimes distorted, sometimes vague, but always changing. You are free to step in and out of these shadows, to question them, to reinterpret them. In fact, it is through this reinterpretation that wisdom grows. Consider how often you revisit an old memory, and suddenly see it differently. What once seemed tragedy now appears as turning point. What once felt insignificant suddenly shines with meaning. The event has not changed, but your shadow of it has. Philosophy teaches that self-understanding emerges not from freezing memory, but from watching how it transforms. The shifting shadow reveals not only where you've been, but who you are becoming. And yet, there is a danger here. Shadows can deceive. A memory, repeated often enough, can grow into a story that feels more solid than it is. Families pass down tales. Individuals polish certain moments until they gleam, and soon the shadow feels like fact. But when examined, it is revealed as partial, incomplete. To live wisely is to notice when memory casts too long a shadow, when it hides more than it reveals. The philosopher advises humility. Remember that what you carry is not the past itself but your version of it. Still, do not dismiss memory altogether. Shadows may distort, but they are born of light. Your memories, fragile though they are, carry the outline of your becoming. They remind you of the lessons you learned, the losses you endured, the joys that marked you. They connect you to others, to places, to threads of story that stretch through time. Without memory, life would be weightless, every moment floating unanchored. The shadows, imperfect though they may be, give you continuity. They make you a story rather than a scattering of moments. So how should you approach these shadows? With gentleness. Do not demand precision. Do not punish yourself for remembering wrongly. Instead, hold your memories like you would hold a candle in the wind, carefully, knowing they may flicker. Let them guide you, but do not mistake them for the entire landscape. Allow them to remind you of who you were, but do not let them chain you from becoming who you are. At night, when you close your eyes, memories often rise unbidden. Faces appear, moments replay, shadows stretch across the mind, rather than fleeing them or clinging to them. Try listening. What are these shadows trying to show you? Not exact details, but truths hidden in feeling. The anger you still carry, the love you still miss, the gratitude you forgot to name. Each shadow of memory is an invitation to notice what still lives in you. The philosopher does not chase memory as fact. He watches it as shadow. He sees how it bends, how it fades, how it sometimes deepens in unexpected ways. He learns not to fear this instability, but to walk with it, to let memory be companion rather than master. For in the end, self-understanding does not come from knowing exactly what happened long ago. It comes from recognizing how memory lives within you now, shaping your thoughts, your choices, your silence. So let the shadows stretch. Do not grasp at them. Do not demand they stand still. Watch them, learn from them, and understand the past is not gone, but neither is it fixed. It moves with you, darkening and softening as you grow. And in these shifting shadows, you glimpse something more enduring than memory itself, the quiet truth of who you are becoming. There is within you a presence that does not push, does not argue, does not command. It simply watches. This presence is what philosophers and mystics have often called the observer, the quiet awareness that notices your life unfolding. It is not your thoughts, though it sees them. It is not your emotions, though it feels them. It is the space in which all thoughts and feelings appear. And when you learn to inhabit this role, to become the gentle observer of yourself, you begin to understand that much of your suffering comes not from life itself, but from how tightly you grip its passing moments. Most of the time, we forget the observer. We identify entirely with what we think or feel. A sudden anger arises, and we become anger. A memory surfaces, and we become regret. The mind spins a story, and we become trapped inside it. In these moments, the observer is hidden, like the sky covered by clouds. But just as the sky remains untouched above the storm, so too does this quiet awareness remain, unshaken by what passes through it. To live with wisdom is to remember the sky, to step back from the storm and watch without being swept away. This is not detachment in the cold sense of ignoring life. The gentle observer does not deny emotion or dismiss thought. It allows them to exist, but without clinging. To observe gently is to treat your inner world the way you might treat a frightened child, with patience, kindness, and space. You watch the tantrum without judgment. You hold the fear without scorn. You see the joy without trying to trap it in permanence. Observation softens experience. It reminds you that everything is moving, and you do not need to hold so tightly. Philosophers across traditions have discovered this. The Stoics spoke of learning to stand apart from the passions, not to extinguish them, but to notice them clearly. The Buddhists described mindfulness, where one sees thoughts as clouds drifting across awareness. The Sufis spoke of polishing the mirror of the heart until it reflects without distortion. All of these traditions point to the same truth. There is a part of you that is larger than what you think or feel, a quiet witness that does not vanish even when storms rage. Yet, this gentle observer must be cultivated. It does not scream for your attention. It waits. To notice it, you must pause. You must allow silence, allow stillness, allow yourself to watch rather than react. At first, this feels impossible. Your thoughts rush too quickly, your feelings overwhelm. But slowly, with practice, you begin to catch moments. You notice that you are angry, even as you are angry. You notice that you are afraid, even as fear floods you. These are the cracks where the observer shines through. With time, the cracks widen. Awareness grows. you begin to carry the observer with you into more moments of life. And in carrying it, you discover freedom. For when you know you are not identical with your passing emotions, you no longer fear them. You can experience sadness without believing it defines you. You can face desire without being enslaved by it. You can meet joy without clutching it desperately. The gentle observer teaches you that all experiences, good and bad, are temporary guests. You are the house in which they stay, but you are not the guests themselves. This shift changes everything. Imagine a conversation where someone insults you. Without the observer, you react immediately. Defensiveness, anger, wounded pride. But with the observer, you notice the sting, and then pause. You realize the insult is not the whole of you. You realize you can choose how to respond. The observer creates space between stimulus and reaction, and in that space lies your freedom. This is why the philosopher Viktor Frankl once said that between stimulus and response there is a space, and in that space lies our growth and freedom. The observer is that space. But to be gentle is crucial. Observation without gentleness becomes judgment. It hardens into a critic watching every move. That is not the observer, but another mask of ego. True observation is soft, patient, kind. It looks without rushing to condemn or praise. It understands that thoughts and feelings are not moral failings but natural movements of the mind. To be gentle is to give yourself the same compassion you would give another, to notice your humanity without tearing it apart. In time, you begin to see that the observer is not just within you but within everyone. Just as you watch your own mind, so too can you watch others without immediately judging. You begin to notice the pain behind their anger, the fear behind their cruelty, the longing behind their joy. Observation expands compassion. When you stop identifying so tightly with your own inner storms, you stop judging others for theirs. You recognize that they too are swept about by feelings. Forgetting the sky above them, you remember that we are all more than the storms we carry. The philosopher in you learns then that wisdom is not about solving every problem or silencing every thought. It is about watching gently. It is about remembering that beneath all turbulence, there is a quiet awareness that does not vanish. This observer is steady, patient, and spacious. It is who you are when you are not lost in what passes through you. Tonight, as you rest, try to feel this presence. Notice the way your breath moves in and out. Notice the rise and fall of thoughts. Notice the way feelings drift through like weather. And then notice that something within you is watching all of this. Steady, calm, quiet. That is the gentle observer. It is not distant. It is you, not the small you that clings to moments, but the larger you that can sit in silence and allow life to unfold. To understand yourself is not to eliminate storms, but to discover the sky that holds them. To live wisely is not to avoid pain or chase joy, but to watch them pass with gentleness, knowing they are not your essence. The gentle observer is your doorway to this wisdom. Step into it, and you will find a self that is freer, kinder, and quieter than you ever imagined. Every thought you have leaves an echo. Sometimes it is loud, like a voice you cannot shake, repeating itself long after the moment has passed. Other times it is faint, a whisper at the edge of awareness. These echoes shape how you see the world, how you understand yourself, how you react to others. Yet most of the time, you do not even notice them. You think a thought, believe it to be gone, but its resonance lingers, coloring your mood, guiding your choices, shaping your identity in ways both subtle and profound. The philosopher listens closely to these echoes. He understands that thought is never entirely private. It leaves traces, not only in your mind, but in your body, your behavior, and your relationships. Recall, for example, a single unkind word spoken to you years ago. The word itself is gone, but the echo remains. It may rise whenever you face doubt, making you hear that same tone in new voices, even when it isn't there. Or consider a single moment of encouragement that carried you through hardship. Long after the speaker forgot, its echo continues to lift you. Thoughts, like stones thrown into water, ripple outward, their effects lasting far longer than the splash. This realization is both humbling and freeing. Humbling, because it shows how little control we often have over the traces our thoughts leave. You may believe a thought is trivial, but its echo may shape your life for years. Freeing, because once you notice the echoes, you can choose how to relate to them. You may not silence them, but you can listen differently, with awareness rather than unconscious obedience. Philosophy invites us to pause and ask, what echoes am I living with? What thoughts, long past, continue to shape me today? Some echoes are kind, the memory of laughter, the warmth of belonging, the reassurance of being loved. Others are harsh, the echo of failure, of guilt, of shame. To understand yourself, you must learn to hear these echoes clearly, without drowning in them. Awareness transforms them from background noise into signals you can examine. Neuroscience offers a mirror to this idea. Studies show that the brain rewires itself with every repeated thought. Pathways strengthen, patterns deepen. What begins as a single thought can become habit, and habit becomes identity. The echo, repeated often enough, becomes a voice you mistake for your own. This is why mindfulness traditions emphasize noticing thought, not to stop thinking, an impossible task, but to recognize thought as echo, not essence. You are not the voice in your head, you are the awareness hearing it. But here lies a challenge. Some echoes are so constant that you no longer recognize them as echoes at all. They become the background hum of your existence. For instance, the quiet belief that you are not enough, carried from childhood, or the persistent drive to prove yourself, born from old comparison. These thoughts may no longer appear consciously, yet their echoes shape every decision, every reaction. To sit in silence is to finally hear them again, to recognize the voices you carry. This recognition can be painful, but it is the first step toward freedom. The gentle way forward is not to fight echoes, but to listen carefully. When you notice a recurring thought, pause. Where did it come from? What memory does it belong to? Is it truly your own voice, or the shadow of someone else's? By tracing the echo to its source, you weaken its hold. You see it for what it is, a remnant, not a truth. And just as echoes can haunt, they can also heal. The echo of kindness carries just as far as the echo of cruelty. A simple act of compassion, even decades past, may continue to resonate within you, reminding you that gentleness exists. The philosopher recognizes this balance. You cannot control every echo that reaches you, but you can choose the ones you create. Every word you speak, every thought you nurture, will leave ripples in your own mind and in others. To live thoughtfully is to release echoes that build rather than break. Imagine yourself standing in a canyon. You shout, and your voice returns, multiplied, layered, reshaped. Sometimes the echo is clear, sometimes it distorts. Your mind works the same way. Every thought you release into it comes back to you, sometimes louder, sometimes twisted. If you fill it only with fear, the canyon of your mind will echo fear back endlessly. But if you allow space for gratitude, for presence, for acceptance, those too will echo, growing stronger with each return. Philosophy teaches patience here. You cannot silence all old echoes at once. They fade slowly, replaced only as new sounds are introduced. Each moment of awareness, each deliberate choice of thought, creates a new resonance. Over time, the harsher echoes weaken, and the gentler ones grow. This is the quiet work of self-understanding, not dramatic change, but steady listening and gentle redirection. It is important to remember that you are not the echo itself. You are not even the thought that began it. You are the space in which the echo resounds. This is why, when you rest at night and notice the thoughts repeating, you can step back. Instead of drowning in them, you can listen as though to distant bells ringing in the fog. They may continue to sound, but you are no longer their prisoner. You are the witness. To understand yourself is not to erase your echoes, but to recognize them. Some you will cherish, some you will release. All of them, together, tell the story of where you have been. But beyond them lies the awareness that listens, the quiet presence that is deeper than thought, freer than memory, gentler than any echo. So tonight, as you hear the whispers of your own mind, do not fear them, notice them. Listen to their resonance, their fading, their return, and then listen more deeply still, to the silence beneath the echo, the space in which thought rises and falls. That silence is your truest self, steady and unshaken. The echoes will come and go, but the awareness that hears them is always here, waiting quietly for you to remember. There is a chair in every room that is not meant to be sat in. You notice it only when it is empty, a place reserved, a space waiting. The empty chair is more than furniture. It is a symbol of absence, a silent reminder of who is not here, of the conversations not spoken, of the parts of yourself left unacknowledged. Philosophy asks us to look at this chair and wonder what sits there when no one does. What does this emptiness reveal about you? In therapy, there is a technique called the empty chair exercise. You place before you a chair with no one in it, and you speak as though a person were there, a parent you lost, a friend you never confronted, a part of yourself you've ignored. The emptiness becomes a mirror, reflecting back what you've buried. In daily life, we rarely do this deliberately, but the effect is always present. The empty chair carries the weight of unspoken presence. Sit quietly in a room with such a chair. Watch how your mind begins to populate it. Sometimes you see a loved one, gone now, yet vividly present in imagination. Sometimes you see an adversary, their absence reminding you of unresolved anger. Sometimes you see yourself, older, younger, a version that might have been. The chair itself remains untouched, but in your awareness, it becomes full. What does this tell you? That emptiness, when faced honestly, always fills itself with meaning. You project onto the absence the truths you have not yet faced. The philosopher sees in this a lesson about the self. Who you are is not only what you do, what you say, what you fill your life with. It is also the spaces you leave open, the gaps in your story, the absences that haunt you. To understand yourself fully, you must turn not only to what is present, but to what is missing. The empty chair teaches this balance. Presence and absence together shape who you are. But this absence is not always sorrowful. Sometimes the empty chair offers comfort. It says, here is space unclaimed, space for rest, space for possibility. In a world that demands constant filling, of time, of conversation, of noise, the chair reminds you that nothingness has value. Just as music is shaped by the pauses between notes, your life is shaped by the empty spaces that give meaning to what surrounds them. Still, absence can ache. Think of an empty chair at a dinner table where once a family member sat. Think of the emptiness beside you, after love has ended. These chairs do not stay neutral. They whisper reminders of loss. They teach you that silence is not always peaceful, but sometimes sharp. And yet, in that ache lies truth. Absence shows the depth of your attachment, the weight of your care. The philosopher does not turn away from this, but accepts it. To feel the weight of an empty chair is to know you have loved, you have connected, you have been human. But the deepest lesson of the empty chair may be about yourself. Place an empty chair before you, and imagine your own self sitting there. Who arrives? Is it the child you once were, still wide-eyed with wonder? Is it the self you long to be, calmer, stronger, more whole? Or is it the self you hide from, the one carrying shame, regret, or longing? The chair reflects what you avoid. To sit across from it in silence is to begin an honest conversation with yourself. This is why the empty chair can feel so heavy. It holds everything you have not yet spoken. It waits patiently for you to notice. And when you do, it does not accuse. It simply reflects, like a mirror of absence. It shows you the shape of what you have not faced. That shape might be grief. It might be possibility. It might be forgiveness. But always, it is part of you. The philosopher suggests we practice this deliberately, not only in therapy, but in ordinary life. Each day, imagine an empty chair before you, and ask what sits here today. Some days it will be a memory. Some days it will be a fear. Some days it will be nothing at all, a pure emptiness that feels like relief. In each case, the exercise reveals something about your inner world. The chair becomes a stage on which your hidden truths perform. But there is also freedom in the empty chair. It reminds you that space exists within you that is not yet claimed by fear or memory. The absence can be possibility. The seat is open for change, for growth, for peace. To recognize this is to understand that you are not bound only by what has been. You are also shaped by what is still possible, by the spaces yet unfilled. Imagine now that chair in your room. No one sits in it. You breathe, and in your mind, shapes appear and fade. You see shadows of the past, glimmers of the future, versions of yourself you have not yet met. And then, if you stay long enough, the images fade too, leaving only the chair, empty again. And in that emptiness, you realize something simple yet profound. You are not required to fill every space. You can allow absence to exist. You can let silence remain. You can rest in the presence of what is not, and still feel whole. The empty chair is not a void to be feared. It is a teacher of absence, a companion of silence, a mirror of the self. When you sit with it, patiently, you begin to see yourself more clearly, not just in what you are, but in what you long for, in what you miss, in what you have yet to accept. To understand yourself, then, is not only to know what fills your life, but to sit quietly with the chair that waits empty, and to listen to what its silence has to say. Philosophers and poets alike have turned to water when trying to explain life. It is the simplest metaphor, yet also the most profound. Water flows. It does not resist its shape, yet it carves valleys, wears down stone, and nourishes all that lives. To live as water flows is to understand yourself not as a rigid form but as a movement, a process, a stream of being that changes with each moment. The quiet philosophy of water invites you to notice this, that who you are is not fixed, but flowing. At first glance, water seems passive. It bends to the shape of whatever contains it. A cup, a riverbank, a storm drain, all dictate where the water goes. But watch more closely, and you realize water holds a paradoxical power. Over time, it dissolves the hardest barriers. It slips through cracks, reshapes landscapes, creates new paths where none existed. Its gentleness is its strength. This is what the Taoist sages saw when they praised water as the highest good. Soft, yielding, yet unstoppable. To live like water is not to abandon strength, but to redefine it. What does this mean for you? It means recognizing that much of your suffering comes from resistance. You want life to flow one way, but it moves another. You demand permanence where change is inevitable. You harden against experience, trying to hold what must pass. The philosopher looks at water and learns a different lesson. Do not resist the current, let yourself move with it, adjusting, yielding, allowing. This does not mean surrendering all will, but rather understanding that true freedom comes not from fighting the flow, but from moving gracefully within it. Consider how water adapts. In winter, it freezes, becoming still. In heat, it evaporates, rising. When blocked, it pools, waiting patiently until it can continue. Each state serves its moment, yet none is permanent. You too contain this adaptability. The challenge is not whether life changes, but whether you allow yourself to change with it. The echo of water within you reminds you that you are not a fixed identity carved in stone, but a stream of being always capable of new form. Stillness is part of this flow. Look at a lake at dawn. The surface is calm, unmoving, yet beneath, currents stir, fish move, light refracts. Stillness is not absence of flow, but a gentler rhythm of it. In your own life too, there are seasons of stillness that are not wasted. They are waters gathering strength, waiting for their moment to move. To resist stillness is to miss the depth that quiet currents bring. And movement too is part of the flow. Water does not question where it goes. It follows gravity, it seeks the low places, it joins with others. In this, there is humility. Water does not cling to high ground, nor does it insist on standing apart. It merges, it connects, it becomes part of something larger. For you to live like water is to recognize the power of connection, to join, to share, to merge your story with others, not in loss, but in growth. Yet water also teaches boundaries. A river's strength lies in its banks. Without them, it floods and loses its course. In your life, flow does not mean drifting without direction. It means moving within a container of values, principles, or practices that give shape to your energy. Flowing like water is not chaos. It is disciplined freedom. The philosopher learns here that gentleness without structure dissolves, while structure without gentleness hardens. Balance is the art. There is also resilience in water. Knock it, and it ripples. Strike it, and it parts without breaking. Burn it, and it transforms to vapor. There is no state in which water is defeated, only changed. This resilience teaches you that your identity, too, can endure change. Loss, failure, grief, these do not end you. They change your form, but the essence of your being, like water, remains. To remember this is to fear change less. Think of your thoughts as water flowing through a stream bed. Some thoughts move quickly, some linger in pools. Some are clear, others muddied by storms. Yet the stream keeps moving. Even the darkest waters eventually clear as new currents arrive. In this way your mind too is always in motion. When you cling to a thought as if it were permanent, you forget the lesson of water. Let it flow. Do not dam every current. Trust that movement itself will carry you to new clarity. The philosopher sees in water the wisdom of surrender. Not surrender in defeat, but surrender in trust. The stream does not know where it ends, yet it flows faithfully. You too cannot know the full shape of your life. You see only a bend, a current, a single drop in motion. To live wisely is to move anyway, to trust that the flow carries you toward a sea you cannot yet see. And what of the sea? Water teaches humility here as well. Each stream, no matter how small, belongs to the vastness. Each drop, insignificant alone, merges into a whole beyond imagination. You too are part of something larger. Your flow joins with others, family, community, humanity. To live as water is to remember that your life, while unique, is also joined to a greater whole. In this truth lies both humility and strength. Tonight, imagine yourself as water. Feel your breath flow in and out, like waves touching the shore. Notice how thoughts ripple and fade, how emotions rise and pass like currents. Notice that even in stillness, something within you moves, carrying you forward. You are not rigid. You are not stuck. You are flow itself. The philosopher whispers, be like water, gentle, yet strong, yielding, yet unstoppable, clear when possible, deep when needed, accepting of stillness, faithful to movement, resilient in change. To understand yourself is to recognize this. You are not stone, fixed and unyielding. You are water, flowing, transforming, carrying within you the quiet strength of life itself. There are many paths in life, but most of them are loud. They are filled with voices telling you where to go, what to achieve, how to measure yourself against others. These are the well-worn roads, paved with noise and expectation. Yet there is another way, one less traveled, often overlooked. It is narrow, subtle, and silent. This is the quiet path, the way of moving through life, not with clamorous ambition, but with steady awareness, not with constant noise, but with listening. To walk the quiet path is to learn that understanding yourself comes not from shouting, but from walking gently. The quiet path is not glamorous. It does not promise recognition, applause, or trophies. Instead, it offers something rarer, alignment. You begin to notice that when you live without constant noise, your actions start to match your inner values. The clamor of comparison fades, and what remains is simple. A step, another step, each taken with intention. The philosopher sees this as true wisdom. For what is philosophy, if not the art of walking carefully through life, paying attention not just to where you arrive, but to how you travel? At first, this path may seem lonely. The world prizes the grand road, crowded with travelers, all shouting their goals, their successes, their struggles. To step aside, to walk more quietly, feels like disappearing, and in a way it is. You disappear from the race, from the contest of louder and louder voices, but in this disappearance, something else appears. You begin to hear your own footsteps, your own breathing, your own thoughts. The path reveals itself not in noise, but in awareness. The quiet path teaches patience. On the louder roads, speed is everything. You must hurry to keep up, to compete, to stay ahead. On the quiet path, there is no rush. Each step matters. Each moment is whole. When you slow down, you notice things the rushing crowd cannot. The curve of a tree branch, the weight of your breath, the subtle rise and fall of emotion. Philosophy has always asked us to notice these things. The Stoics spoke of examining each day with care. The Buddhists taught mindful walking, each step an act of presence. The quiet path is where such teachings take root. But walking quietly is not always easy. The noise of the larger road calls to you. You hear others celebrating their speed, their accomplishments, and you wonder if you are being left behind. The mind begins to doubt. Is this path too small, too simple? Yet here is the paradox. The quiet path leads not to less, but to more depth, more clarity, more alignment with what truly matters. The louder roads may bring recognition, but often at the cost of forgetting yourself. The quiet path, though slower, leads you back to your center. There is a kind of strength in this quietness. People mistake silence for weakness, but silence is what allows you to stand firm against the tide of noise. To walk quietly is to resist the pressure to shout, to perform, to prove. It is to say, I do not need to be louder than others. I only need to be true to myself. This strength is not brittle, like pride. It is flexible, like bamboo, bending with storms, but never breaking. The quiet path also reshapes how you see success. On the crowded roads, success is measured by comparison. Faster, richer, louder. On the quiet path, success is measured by alignment. Did I live today in harmony with myself? Did my actions reflect my values? Did I pause long enough to notice? These are quieter questions, but their answers reveal a deeper kind of fulfillment. You may not win applause, but you will find peace, and in the end, peace lasts longer than applause. Imagine walking at dusk along a narrow trail, the air cooling, the world dimming, no one else is around. At first, the silence unnerves you, but as you continue, you begin to notice details you would otherwise miss. The sound of a bird settling into its nest, the faint scent of earth, the rhythm of your own steps. This is the essence of the quiet path. The world becomes richer when you stop trying to drown it out. Philosophy whispers here too. Socrates asked questions quietly in the marketplace. Not to win, but to understand. Lazozzi described the Tao as a way that cannot be shouted, only followed with humility. Even Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, sought quiet reflection amid the chaos of empire. All of them remind us, truth is not found in noise. It is found in silence, in humility, in walking quietly with yourself. The quiet path is not an escape from life, but a deeper entry into it. You still work, still love, still face challenges, but you carry a different rhythm. You do not rush as others do, nor do you measure yourself by their pace. You learn to listen, to move gently, to let your steps match the ground beneath you. This quietness does not mean inaction. Water flows quietly but shapes valleys. Seeds grow silently but split stone. The quiet path holds this same hidden power. And so, to walk the quiet path is to trust that noise is not necessary for meaning. You do not need to announce your worth. You do not need to prove your journey by shouting it. Your life speaks in the way you live it, in the gentleness of your steps, in the presence of your attention, in the integrity of your choices. Tonight, as you rest, imagine yourself on such a path, no crowd, no rush, only you and the ground beneath your feet. Each step carries you forward, quietly, steadily. In this silence, you are not lost. You are not behind. You are simply here, and here is enough. The quiet path is not about arriving. It is about walking, gently, truthfully, awake to the life that unfolds with every step you take. The simplest act you perform each day is also the most profound. You breathe. From the moment you are born until the moment you die, breath is your constant companion. You rarely notice it, and yet it carries you through every joy, every sorrow, every moment of existence. Philosophy, when it is quiet and attentive, reminds you to return to this forgotten teacher. Breath is not just air moving in and out of your body. It is a lesson in rhythm, impermanence, presence, and acceptance. To learn from the breath is to begin to understand yourself at the most fundamental level. Inhale, exhale. Already the teaching begins. Breath flows without your command, reminding you that much of life is beyond control. You do not will each breath. It arrives as gift. Even when you forget, when you sleep, when you despair, breath remains faithful. This is the first lesson. You are sustained not only by effort but by grace. To live is not always to strive, but sometimes simply to allow. Breath shows you that existence is carried as much by what you receive as by what you do. The second lesson comes in the rhythm. Breath is a cycle, expansion, release, expansion again. You cannot hold the inhale forever, no matter how sweet. You cannot push away the exhale forever, no matter how reluctant. Each completes the other. Life too is this way. Joy arrives, then passes. Sorrow arrives, then passes. Success and failure, gain and loss, love and grief, all move like breath, cycling, returning, never staying. The philosopher watches his breathing and remembers permanence is an illusion. To cling is to suffocate. To let go is to live. Notice what happens when you pause to feel your breath. At first you may find restlessness. Your mind wants noise, wants distraction. But slowly, as you stay with the rhythm, your body begins to soften. The shoulders drop, the heartbeat steadies, the mind quiets. Breath teaches you presence. Each inhale anchors you here. Each exhale releases what you cannot carry. With each cycle, you discover that awareness is not in the past or the future, but in this very moment, where air moves in and out. Traditions across the world have honored this. In yoga, breath is pranayama, the control of life force. In Buddhism, breath is the foundation of mindfulness, a way to return to awareness. The Stoics spoke of attending to what is within your power, and what is more within your reach than the breath moving now. All remind us, to breathe consciously is to awaken. You do not need distant journeys or grand revelations. You need only to notice what is already sustaining you. Breath also reveals the connection between body and mind. When you are anxious, your breathing quickens. When you are calm, it slows. When you are angry, it sharpens. When you are at peace, it deepens. Breath does not lie. It reflects your state. even when words cannot. By listening to your breath, you begin to hear yourself more honestly, and by changing your breath, slowing it, softening it, you discover that you can shift your inner state. Breath is both mirror and guide. Yet, breath also teaches humility. There are limits to your control. You can slow or deepen it for a time, but eventually the body reclaims its rhythm. This is a reminder of your place in the order of things. You are not master of every moment. You are part of a larger flow of nature, sustained by forces you cannot command. To breathe is to acknowledge dependence, to bow gently before the mystery that gives you life. But perhaps the most profound teaching of breath is its simplicity. You do not need to complicate it. You do not need elaborate rituals. You need only awareness. A single breath noticed fully contains more wisdom than hours of noisy thought. In that breath, you learn that life is fragile, that life is precious, that life is happening right now. You cannot breathe yesterday's air. You cannot store tomorrow's. You can only breathe now. To live in this awareness is to live awake. Imagine yourself lying in bed, noticing the rise and fall of your chest. Inhale, cool air filling the lungs. Exhale, warmth leaving, tension dissolving. With each cycle, you feel the world quiet around you. Worries fade with the exhale. Hope returns with the inhale. This is the philosophy of breath. Simple yet profound presence, acceptance, renewal. Each breath is both beginning and ending. A constant reminder that you are always in motion, always in process, always alive. The philosopher then learns to return to the breath. Often, in moments of joy, he pauses to breathe, to savor. In moments of sorrow, he breathes, to endure. In confusion, in stillness, in fear, always breath. The rhythm reminds him that he does not need to solve everything now. He needs only to breathe, and the next moment will come. And so tonight, let your breath be your teacher. Listen to it, feel it, let it carry you. Notice its rhythm, its patience, its constancy. Notice that it asks nothing of you, except that you allow it to move, and in this allowing, you discover the greatest lesson. You do not need to control everything to be alive. You need only to breathe. To understand yourself is to remember this. You are not your achievements, not your failures, not your endless thoughts. You are the one who breathes, quietly, steadily, here and now, and in each breath, you are given the chance to begin again. There is a difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is the ache of absence, the sense that something is missing. Solitude, however, is a presence. It is the moment when you discover that your own company is not empty, but full. The world often warns you against being alone. It tells you to fill silence with chatter, to fill evenings with company, to measure worth by how many people surround you. But philosophy reminds you that solitude, when embraced, is not deprivation. It is a teacher. To sit with yourself in quiet companionship is to understand that you are already whole. At first, solitude may feel harsh. The mind, unaccustomed to silence, rushes to fill it with worries, regrets, endless noise. You may hear the old echoes of doubt. What if I am alone because I am unworthy? What if I cannot face myself without distraction? This is the first challenge of solitude. To stay when the impulse is to flee, to remain when loneliness calls. In staying, you discover that the fear of solitude is not about emptiness but about intimacy. You fear not that nothing will be there, but that you will be there, waiting. The philosopher suggests that this is precisely why solitude matters. Only in solitude do you meet yourself without mask, with no one to impress, no role to play. You are stripped down to presence. Who are you when no one is watching? Who are you when the world is silent? These questions cannot be answered in noise. They require solitude's embrace. But solitude is not punishment. Think of a forest clearing at dawn. Alone, you hear the bird's song clearly, the wind through the leaves, the quiet rhythm of your breath. None of this is lonely. It is presence sharpened by silence. Solitude teaches you to notice what constant noise hides. It slows you down, anchors you, reminds you that the world is richer than you realized. And more importantly, it reminds you that your own mind, though restless, contains beauty too. There is power in choosing solitude. Loneliness often feels imposed, unwanted, but solitude is chosen. When you deliberately step away from noise, you transform absence into space. You begin to see solitude not as lack, but as abundance. Abundance of time, of attention, of clarity. In solitude you can think without interruption, feel without performance, rest without judgment. You begin to realize that solitude is not a prison, but a sanctuary. This does not mean solitude is always easy. It exposes what you hide. Sit quietly long enough, and your regrets surface, your fears appear, your doubts whisper. Many avoid solitude for this reason. But philosophy teaches that avoidance does not erase truth. To embrace solitude is to allow these voices to rise, to listen without running, to acknowledge without collapsing. Solitude does not harm you. It reveals you. And in this revelation lies the possibility of healing. Great thinkers across history have sought solitude. Marcus Aurelius, ruling Rome, wrote his meditations in moments stolen from the crowd. Thoreau went to the woods, not to escape life, but to live it more fully. Mystics retreated into deserts, monks into cells, poets into forests. Each discovered the same truth. Solitude is not emptiness but clarity. In solitude, distractions fall away, and what remains is essence. You discover what is truly yours, and what was borrowed from the noise of others. Yet solitude also teaches humility. You realize how much of your identity is built on relationship, on reflection in the eyes of others. To be alone is to see yourself without those mirrors. Sometimes what you find is unsettling, a rawness, a vulnerability. But sometimes what you find is liberating, the discovery that you are more than the roles you play. You are not only child, partner, friend, worker. You are a being who exists, quietly, beyond these roles. Imagine sitting by yourself in a quiet room. At first, the emptiness feels loud, but slowly you notice your breathing, then the shape of light on the wall, then the rhythm of your thoughts slowing. Eventually the fear of aloneness fades, and something softer takes its place. Calm. You realize that you are not abandoned. You are simply with yourself, and that is enough. This is solitude's embrace, a gentle holding that says you do not need to flee your own company. Of course, solitude must be balanced. Too much can isolate, too little can suffocate, but to never taste it at all is to miss one of life's deepest teachers. Solitude reminds you that you are not defined only by what you give to others, but also by what you discover within. It teaches you to find nourishment in your own presence, so that when you return to the world, you do so not out of neediness, but out of fullness. The philosopher understands that solitude is not an escape from life, but a return to it. When you emerge from solitude, the world looks sharper, relationships feel deeper, time feels more precious. Why? Because solitude stripped away the noise long enough for you to remember what matters. In its embrace, you learned that you are not empty, not lacking, not broken. You are whole, even in silence. So tonight, allow solitude to hold you. Do not fear the silence of your room. Let it remind you that you are enough, without noise, without company, without endless distractions. Solitude does not reject you. It welcomes you back to yourself. And in its embrace you discover a truth, both humbling and liberating. You were never truly alone. You were always here, waiting quietly, ready to be found. When you stand at the edge of the sea, or gaze across a wide plain, your eyes always meet a horizon. It is where the known ends and the unknown begins, where the visible world dissolves into distance. The horizon is soft because it never holds still. Walk toward it, and it retreats. Fix your eyes on it, and it shifts with the light. It reminds you that some things in life cannot be grasped, only approached. The horizon is a metaphor for the self, always present, always visible, yet never entirely reachable. To understand yourself, you must learn to live with horizons. At first, the horizon feels frustrating. It suggests limit. No matter how far you go, there is always further. No matter how much you know, there is always mystery. This can create restlessness. The human mind longs for certainty, for final answers, for solid ground, yet the horizon refuses to give it. Philosophy notices this refusal and interprets it not as failure, but as invitation. The soft horizon says, knowledge and self-understanding are not destinations. They are journeys. You do not arrive, you continue. The horizon also teaches humility. It shows you that your vision is always partial. You see the sky meeting the earth, but only from where you stand. Another person, standing elsewhere, sees a different horizon. Truth, then, is not a single line fixed for all, but a shifting boundary shaped by perspective. To understand yourself is to accept that your view is always limited, that there will always be more to discover, more to see. This is not weakness, but openness. The horizon keeps you humble enough to keep walking. But there is comfort in the horizon too. It is steady, always waiting, always guiding. Sailors once navigated by it. Travelers lifted their eyes to it. The horizon draws you forward, giving you direction even as it recedes. In your own life, this translates to purpose. You may never fully arrive at understanding yourself, but the horizon gives you a direction to move in. Each step you take toward honesty, awareness, reflection, that is movement toward your horizon. It softens the fear of uncertainty by reminding you that you do not need to know everything now. You need only to keep walking. The horizon is soft because it blends. Sky into earth, earth into sky. There is no sharp edge, no clear line. Life is like this too. You want boundaries to be clean, good and bad, right and wrong, success and failure. But the truth is softer. Everything blurs into everything else. Success often carries failure within it. Joy is tinged with sorrow. Love comes with risk. The soft horizon teaches you to accept this blending, to let go of rigid categories. Understanding yourself requires this softness, an acceptance that you too are not fixed but blended, part shadow, part light, part known, part mystery. Stand at sunset and watch the horizon. Notice how it changes color, how it glows, how it dissolves into night. The horizon does not resist change. It wears each color as it comes. You too carry many colors. Some days you are bright, some days muted, some days shadowed. To live wisely is not to demand one permanent shade, but to accept your changing hues. The horizon's softness reminds you that identity, like color, shifts with light. Who you are is not static, but alive. Philosophy often struggles with limits. What can we know? What can we prove? But the soft horizon whispers a different lesson. Limits are not walls but invitations. You cannot walk past the horizon, but you can walk toward it, and in doing so, the world expands. Likewise, you cannot fully know yourself in one final revelation, but you can move toward greater awareness, and in doing so, your life deepens. The horizon gives you enough to move, but not enough to finish. This balance keeps you alive to possibility. There is also peace in knowing the horizon cannot be reached. It takes away the pressure of finality. You do not need to arrive. You do not need to arrive. You do not need to complete yourself like a puzzle. You are allowed to remain unfinished, in motion, becoming. The horizon gives you permission to live as a work in progress. To embrace the soft horizon is to let go of the demand for perfection and rest in the beauty of the ongoing. Imagine standing alone on a hill, watching the horizon stretch endlessly. At first, you long to reach it, but slowly, you realize the beauty is not in arriving but in looking. The horizon's softness soothes you, reminding you that life is not a race to completion. It is a quiet unfolding, step by step, color by color, day by day. The philosopher recognizes that in this unfolding, wisdom emerges, not in final answers, but in patient gazing, in walking steadily toward what can never be fully grasped. Tonight, let the soft horizon rest in your mind. Picture it as you breathe, that endless blending of sky and earth, presence and mystery. Let it remind you that you do not need to resolve everything now. You are allowed to walk without arriving, to seek without completing, to live within questions without demanding final answers. The horizon is not an enemy of certainty, but a companion of wonder. To understand yourself, then, is to see your life as horizon, always visible, always guiding, but never entirely captured. You are not meant to be finished. You are meant to be unfolding, soft at the edges, blending with mystery, stretching toward possibilities yet unseen. The horizon teaches you that you are both here and not yet, both known and unknown, both grounded and infinite, and in that softness lies peace. Doubt often arrives quietly. It does not slam the door open or shout its presence. Instead, it slips into the room like a whisper, soft but insistent. You feel it in the pause before a decision, in the late-night question that wakes you from sleep, in the hesitation that lingers even after you have spoken. Doubt unsettles, but it also sharpens. It unsettles because it loosens the ground beneath you. It sharpens because it forces you to look more closely. Philosophy has always treated doubt not as an enemy, but as a companion. The whispers of doubt remind you that certainty can be dangerous, and that self-understanding grows not in rigid belief, but in quiet questioning. At first, doubt feels like weakness. You want to be sure, to stand firm, to act without hesitation. You admire those who seem confident, who move without second-guessing. And so, When doubt comes, you judge yourself. Why can't I just be certain? Why do I always hesitate? But philosophy suggests the opposite. It is certainty that should be questioned, and doubt that should be honored. For certainty can blind you, while doubt forces you to see. Doubt, then, is not weakness, but awareness. Consider the philosopher Descartes, who began his search for truth by doubting everything. He stripped away all beliefs until he reached what could not be doubted. I think, therefore I am. From doubt, he found the foundation of certainty. Or think of Socrates, who claimed to know nothing, and asked questions of everyone. His doubt was not despair but method, a way to peel away false confidence and reach deeper truth. Doubt whispers because it does not need to scream. It knows its power lies in subtle persistence. But doubt can also become destructive if left unchecked. When every thought is questioned, when every choice feels paralyzed, you become trapped. The whispers grow into an echo chamber, drowning out movement. This is the shadow side of doubt, when it ceases to sharpen and begins to suffocate. The philosopher warns here, doubt must be balanced with trust. The point is not to doubt everything forever, but to use doubt as a tool, then move forward once clarity emerges. Like a knife, doubt cuts, but its purpose is to clear, not to wound endlessly. The whispers of doubt are often most active in self-reflection. You look at your choices and wonder, was I right? Did I waste my time? Should I have been someone else? These questions can sting. They can keep you circling the past, replaying moments again and again. Yet within them is a gift. Doubt shows you where you are still tender, where you still long for assurance. It points to the places within yourself that require deeper understanding. To silence doubt completely would be to silence this call to growth. And so, the challenge is not to banish doubt but to listen wisely. When doubt whispers, pause. Ask, what is this doubt pointing to? Is it revealing a truth I need to face, or is it the echo of old fear? Sometimes doubt shows you where you are betraying your values. Sometimes it only repeats voices from the past that no longer belong to you. Listening carefully allows you to tell the difference. Doubt becomes teacher rather than tormentor. There is a tenderness in doubt as well. It reminds you that you are human, that you are not all-knowing, that you will always be in process. Doubt humbles you. It softens arrogance, slows rashness, prevents you from hardening into dogma. A person who doubts gently is more open, more compassionate, more willing to hear others. For if you know the weight of your own uncertainty, you are less harsh toward the uncertainties of others. Doubt, then, can deepen empathy. Imagine sitting in silence, and doubt arises. At first it stirs anxiety, a restless shifting, a desire to escape. But if you stay, if you breathe, you notice the whisper more clearly. It is not shouting, you are wrong, but asking softly, are you sure? Have you looked closely enough? In that moment, you realize doubt is not trying to destroy you but to invite you deeper. It does not demand panic. It invites inquiry. This is why philosophy calls doubt a doorway. Behind every whisper lies a chance to question, to see more fully, to refine your path. Without doubt, you might cling to false beliefs, live unexamined lives, follow voices that are not your own. With doubt, you are forced to slow, to look again, to choose with more awareness. The whispers are unsettling, but they keep you awake. And yet, there is a point where the whisper must fade into action. A ship cannot sail if it questions every wave. At some point, you must trust the course you have chosen, even knowing it may not be perfect. This is where philosophy balances doubt with courage. Doubt clears the path, but courage walks it. Without doubt, courage becomes reckless. Without courage, doubt becomes paralysis. Together, they create wisdom. Tonight, as you rest, listen for the whispers of doubt within you. Do not push them away, and do not drown in them. Hear what they are asking. Maybe they are pointing to a truth you've avoided. Maybe they are echoes of old fears that no longer belong. Either way, listen gently. Then, when you are ready, breathe, and let action follow. Doubt has done its work. The whisper has sharpened you. You may not be certain, but you can move with awareness, and in that movement, you continue to grow. To understand yourself is to accept that doubt will always accompany you. It will whisper at the edges of your choices. It will linger at the borders of your confidence. But rather than seeing it as enemy, see it as companion. Doubt walks beside you, not to block your way, but to ensure that each step you take is awake. There is a part of you that others see, the self you present through words, gestures, and roles. This self is familiar, shaped by expectations and responsibilities. Yet beneath it lies another self, quieter, less defined, rarely revealed. Philosophy calls this the hidden self, the layers of you that live beneath the surface, the parts you conceal even from yourself. To understand who you are, you cannot stop at the visible. You must learn to sit patiently with what is hidden, to notice the faint shapes moving beneath the waters of your awareness. At first, the hidden self can feel unreachable. You sense its presence only in moments of surprise, when a sudden emotion rises that you cannot explain, when a dream leaves you shaken, when you react in a way that feels foreign. These glimpses are like shadows moving behind a curtain. They remind you that what you show to the world is only a fraction of what you are. The philosopher learns to listen carefully to these moments, to treat them not as accidents but as messages. Each surprise is a doorway into the hidden self. Why do we hide parts of ourselves? Sometimes for protection. You learned, early on, which parts of you would be accepted and which would not. To survive, you pushed certain feelings underground. Anger, vulnerability, longing. Over time, these hidden aspects did not disappear. They grew roots. They shaped you silently, influencing choices, desires, fears. The hidden self is not gone. It is simply unacknowledged, and until you face it, it will continue to shape your life from the shadows. But the hidden self is not only pain. It is also potential. Within it lies creativity, intuition, tenderness, aspects too delicate for the harshness of the outer world. By hiding them, you preserved them. To uncover the hidden self is to rediscover treasures you once buried for safety. The philosopher suggests, approaching with gentleness, not force. What is hidden will not emerge if attacked. It reveals itself slowly when trust is given. Dreams often carry pieces of the hidden self. They present symbols, strange narratives, emotions exaggerated beyond reason. You wake unsettled, wondering what it meant. Philosophy suggests, listen. Dreams may not be literal, but they point to truths that the waking mind resists. They are messages from the hidden self, urging you to pay attention. If you ignore them, they fade, but if you honor them, they guide. Silence also reveals the hidden self. When the noise of daily life falls away, when you are left with your thoughts, you may hear voices you usually drown out. Memories return, feelings surface, questions rise. At first, this can be uncomfortable, even frightening. But if you stay, you discover that the hidden self is not a monster to be feared. It is a part of you longing for recognition. To understand yourself, you must learn to welcome what appears, even when it unsettles. The philosopher Jung spoke of the shadow, the parts of the self denied or repressed. He warned that ignoring the shadow allows it to control you unconsciously. But integrating it, acknowledging, accepting, even befriending it, brings wholeness. The hidden self is not the enemy of the visible self. It is its companion. Without it, you are only partial, only surface. With it, you become whole. Yet, embracing the hidden self requires courage. It may show you desires you thought unacceptable, fears you hoped to escape, flaws you tried to bury. To face these is not easy, but the philosopher reminds you denial does not erase. What is hidden continues to act, unseen. To acknowledge is not to weaken, but to strengthen. Only when you look honestly can you choose consciously. Only when you bring the hidden self into light can you live with integrity. But there is beauty here too. The hidden self carries your forgotten joy, your lost wonder, your quiet strength. It may hold the part of you that once loved to create, or to dream, or to play. These are not gone, only hidden. When you embrace them, life expands. The hidden self once feared becomes a source of renewal. Imagine sitting in a quiet room, eyes closed, breathing slowly. At first your surface self runs through its routines, lists, worries, roles. But if you stay long enough, another presence stirs, a memory surfaces, an image forms, a feeling rises, unbidden. You realize you are touching something deeper, something hidden. If you listen, if you welcome it, you begin to learn. The hidden self speaks not in clear sentences, but in images, moods, impulses. To understand it, you must be patient, attentive, willing to sit with mystery. The hidden self will never be fully revealed. Like the horizon, it shifts, always more than you can grasp. But this is not failure. It is life. You are not meant to be transparent to yourself. You are meant to be unfolding. The hidden self reminds you that there is always more to discover, always new depths to explore. To live is to keep learning what lies within. So tonight, as you rest, let yourself acknowledge the presence of your hidden self. Do not force it to appear. Simply admit that beneath the surface of who you show to the world, there are deeper layers waiting. Some hold wounds, some hold wonders, all are yours. To embrace the hidden self is to embrace your wholeness, not only the polished, visible face, but also the shadows, the tenderness, the forgotten. In this embrace, you find a self truer than either alone, a self wide enough to contain all of you. Life often feels like a string of events. Waking, working, eating, speaking, sleeping. You mark your days by these milestones, by the things that happen. Yet if you look closely, you will notice that much of life does not occur in the events themselves, but in the spaces between them. The pause between words in a conversation. The silence after laughter fades, the stillness between a breath in and a breath out. These moments between moments are so subtle that you often overlook them. But philosophy suggests that it is precisely here, in these quiet intervals, that you begin to truly understand yourself. Why do these spaces matter? Because they reveal what you carry when nothing distracts you. In the moment between moments, there is no performance, no task, no demand. There is only you, bare and present. For many, this is uncomfortable. The urge is to fill the gaps quickly, with chatter, with scrolling, with movement. But the philosopher notices that when you rush to fill every silence, you miss the chance to see who you are when nothing else is speaking for you. Think of music. Notes alone do not create beauty. It is the rests, the pauses, that give melody shape. Without silence, music is noise. Life is the same. The events are notes, but the meaning comes from the spaces in between. When you linger in these intervals, you begin to notice texture, how your body feels when it is not acting, how your mind shifts when it is not occupied, how your heart beats when it is not rushing. These details, usually hidden, reveal the quiet self beneath the noise. There is also depth in these pauses. In conversation, it is not only what is said that matters, but what is left unsaid. The silence between words often carries more weight than the words themselves. A pause can mean hesitation, longing, fear, or trust. To listen to the moment between words is to understand another person more deeply. To listen to the moments between your own actions is to understand yourself. But you must learn to value what seems empty. The modern world urges you to be efficient, to fill every gap with productivity. Waiting feels like waste. Silence feels like failure. But the philosopher challenges this. What if these empty moments are not waste but wealth? What if they are the places where life breathes, where you are restored, where wisdom grows? To ignore them is to miss the very fabric that holds your life together. In meditation practices, great attention is given to the space between breaths. Inhale, pause, exhale, pause. At first, the pauses feel like nothing, but with awareness, they become the richest part. In the stillness, you feel presence most fully. The same is true for the larger pauses of life. The waiting between jobs, the quiet after a relationship ends, the emptiness after a dream collapses. These are moments between moments, and though painful, they hold possibility. They are thresholds, openings into transformation. Of course, such spaces are not always easy. They can feel heavy with uncertainty. When you are between things, you do not know who you are. You are no longer what you were, but not yet what you will become. This is unsettling, but philosophy urges patience. The chrysalis between caterpillar and butterfly is uncomfortable, yet necessary. The moments between moments in your life are the same. They hold the work of becoming, unseen but essential. Think of the quiet at dawn, before the day begins. Nothing has started yet, but the world feels full, waiting. This fullness is the essence of the between. It is not emptiness, but potential. To pause here is to sense the richness of possibility. To recognize that life is not only about outcomes, but about presence. In these moments, you learn to be without needing to do. There is wisdom too in slowing enough to notice the small transitions. The way your body shifts when you move from standing to sitting. The instant before you answer a question. The pause before you open a door. Each carries subtle truths about how you move, how you react, how you live. Awareness of these details sharpens understanding. You begin to see not only what you do, but how you do it. And in this, self-knowledge deepens. The philosopher finds peace here. In the rush of events, the mind is scattered. In the silence between, the mind gathers. When you attend to these spaces, you realize that much of your anxiety comes not from the events themselves, but from your refusal to pause. You leap from one thing to another, never resting in the space between. But when you allow yourself to stay, even briefly, you discover calm. The moments between moments become a refuge. Tonight, as you prepare to rest, notice these intervals. The pause before sleep arrives. The silence after a thought fades. The stillness of your body between one breath and the next. Let yourself linger here, without rushing. Do not treat these moments as absence. Treat them as presence. Soft, subtle, essential. To understand yourself is not only to examine your actions and choices, but to notice the spaces between them. You are not only what you do, but also what you are in stillness. The moments between moments are where the deeper self waits, quiet, patient, ready to be seen. When you learn to embrace these intervals, you no longer fear silence. You recognize it as life's hidden heartbeat, steady, soft, guiding you toward a deeper awareness of who you are. Close your hand tightly into a fist and hold it there. After a while, you feel tension in your palm, strain in your wrist, fatigue creeping up your arm. Now release it. The muscles soften, the ache dissolves, the hand feels light again. This simple act carries a profound lesson. Grasping exhausts, while openness frees. Philosophy often returns to this image, the hand as symbol of how we live. To clench is to cling to control, certainty, possessions or identity. To open is to allow, to trust, to receive. The open hand is not weakness but wisdom. Much of our suffering arises from holding on too tightly. You cling to relationships long after they have ended. You grasp at success as though it could secure permanence. You hold fast to beliefs even when they no longer fit. The fist feels safe, but it also imprisons. The philosopher suggests that to live with an open hand is to recognize the impermanence of all things. Life flows through you the way sand runs through fingers. To resist this is to grow weary. To accept it is to find peace. But openness is not passivity. The open hand does not mean abandoning effort or refusing to act. It means holding without clutching, caring without controlling, giving without calculating return. When your hand is open, you can still hold, but gently with the awareness that what you hold is not yours to possess forever. Love, time, even breath, all are gifts to be received and released. The philosopher Lao compared this to water, yielding yet strong, present yet unattached. Think of generosity. To give with a clenched hand is impossible. True giving requires openness, a willingness to let go, and yet, paradoxically, the more you give, the more space you create to receive. The open hand teaches that abundance does not come from accumulation but from circulation. Just as a river grows stagnant if dammed, so too does the heart when it clings. Flow is restored when you open, when you allow life to move through you rather than trying to trap it. The open hand also transforms relationships. When you hold others with a fist, you demand, control, possess. But people, like water, cannot be forced into shape. They slip through, resist, or break away. When you hold them with openness, however, you give them space to be themselves. They remain not out of force, but out of trust. Love, in its deepest form, is always an open hand, a willingness to let another be free, even if it means they may not stay. This openness extends inward as well. Many live with a clenched hand toward themselves, grasping tightly to identity, refusing to admit change, punishing themselves for imperfection. The open hand within says, I am willing to accept myself as I am, in flux, incomplete. It loosens the grip of self-judgment and allows growth. Without openness, you trap yourself in old versions of who you were. With openness, you give yourself permission to become. Of course, openness carries risk. To open your hand is to risk loss. Something may be taken, something may slip away. This is why many resist it, preferring the illusion of control. But the philosopher notes, loss comes whether the hand is open or closed. The clenched fist cannot prevent change, it only adds suffering to it. The open hand, though vulnerable, is also free. It accepts loss as part of life, and finds in that acceptance a strange strength. Consider how breath itself mirrors this truth. To inhale, you must open. To exhale, you must release. If you clench your lungs, refusing to let go, you suffocate. If you refuse to receive, you weaken. Life depends on this rhythm of openness, a continual giving and receiving. The open hand, then, is not just metaphor, but embodiment. You are built to open. You are sustained by release. Imagine yourself walking through a quiet field, your hand unclenched, Fingers spread slightly, palm relaxed. You feel the air move between your fingers, the light resting on your skin. The openness feels natural, effortless. Now imagine carrying this same openness into your inner life, releasing grudges, loosening perfectionism, softening your grip on outcomes. Suddenly, life feels lighter. The world is not yours to control, but it is yours to experience fully. The open hand teaches you to trust this flow. Philosophy here offers a paradox. Only what you release truly remains. Hold love too tightly, and it suffocates. Release it, and it breathes. Cling to certainty, and it crumbles. Loosen your grip, and wisdom emerges. The open hand reminds you that strength is not in grasping, but in letting go. You cannot stop time. You cannot hold every person, every moment, every joy. But you can open yourself to them, receive them fully, and let them pass without bitterness. Tonight, as you rest, imagine your hand opening. Feel the muscles soften, the tension fall away. Picture everything you've been clinging to. Fears, regrets, ambitions, identities, resting gently in your palm. And then, with an exhale, let your hand release. Watch as the images drift away, not lost, but freed. Notice how light you feel when the fist no longer rules you. To understand yourself is to learn the wisdom of the open hand, that nothing is truly possessed, that life is flow, that release is as essential as holding. When you live with this openness, you discover that you are not weakened but freed. You are no longer a clenched fist against the world, but a hand open to it, ready to give, ready to receive, ready to live with gentleness and trust. Every life carries with it a companion that is rarely acknowledged, yet always present. This companion does not speak, does not demand, does not leave. It sits quietly beside you through every season of life, watching, waiting. Sometimes you forget it is there. Sometimes you feel its presence so strongly that you cannot escape it. Philosophy calls this presence the silent companion, the inner witness, the unspoken awareness that travels with you from birth to death. To understand yourself, you must learn to recognize this companion, to sit with it, to allow its quiet company to teach you. The silent companion appears most clearly in solitude. When the world grows quiet and you are alone, you sense something else with you. You cannot name it easily. It is not exactly thought, not exactly feeling, but something that watches both. Some traditions call it the soul, some call it awareness, some simply call it the observer. Whatever name you give, the experience is the same. You realize you are never truly alone, because part of you is always there, silently present. At first, this presence can be unsettling. You may feel it as loneliness, as if the silence is too sharp, too heavy. But if you stay, if you listen carefully, you notice that the companion does not accuse or judge. It simply is. It watches you with patience, with neutrality, with an openness that words cannot capture. The philosopher learns here that the silent companion is not enemy, but guide. Its silence invites you to see yourself more clearly. You can sense this companion in small moments, when you hesitate before speaking and hear an inner voice asking, "Is this true?" When you catch yourself in anger and suddenly notice, "This is not who I want to be." When you walk in nature and feel strangely accompanied, as if something within you is walking beside you. These moments are not coincidences. They are glimpses of the silent companion, reminding you that there is always more to you than the noise of thought. But why is the companion silent? Because words would distract. The companion does not argue, does not insist, does not explain. It knows that understanding cannot be forced, only discovered. Silence is its teaching. By refusing to shout, it draws your attention inward. By staying still, it invites you to slow down. This silence can feel frustrating to a restless mind that wants answers. Yet the philosopher knows that sometimes silence speaks more loudly than words. The presence itself is the lesson. The silent companion is also steady. Unlike your shifting moods, your rising and falling desires, your changing roles, it does not alter. It was there when you were a child, wondering at the sky. It is here now, reading these words. It will remain when you are old, looking back on your life. In a world of change, this constancy is profound. It suggests that beneath all layers of identity, there is a part of you that does not move, a still witness, silent but enduring. To sit with this companion requires courage. Silence can feel uncomfortable, because it leaves space for what you hide. When you slow down, regrets rise, fears whisper, grief surfaces, but the companion does not flinch. It does not flee when you face these things. Instead, it stays with you, holding space for what you uncover. In this way, the silent companion teaches resilience. It shows you that you can survive facing yourself, because you are never truly alone. Philosophers and mystics across traditions have spoken of this presence. The Stoics described the inner citadel, the unshaken core within each person. Buddhists speak of awareness, the quiet observer behind thought. Christian mystics spoke of the soul as God's indwelling silence. Different names, same truth, there is a presence within you, silent yet constant, that offers companionship when all else falls away. Imagine walking through a forest at dusk. The air is still, the trees quiet. You feel a presence beside you. Not another person, not an animal, but something that makes you feel less alone. That is the silent companion. You cannot touch it, but you can sense it. You cannot command it, but you can sit with it. And in its company, you feel both smaller, because you realize you are not everything, and larger, because you realize you are more than your fleeting thoughts. The silent companion also teaches humility. It shows you that there is more to you than the voice in your head. You are not only the thinker, the doer, the struggler, you are also the one who notices. This noticing self is quieter, gentler, less concerned with proving. When you recognize this, you begin to live with more patience, less urgency. You realize you do not need to react to every thought. You can watch them pass, held in the silence of your companion. Yet the companion does not remove you from life. It does not tell you to withdraw, to abandon, to escape. Instead, it walks with you through everything. Joy, sorrow, success, failure. It is there. Its silence reminds you that no experience defines you completely. All pass, but the witness remains. In this, the silent companion is not only comfort but grounding. It anchors you in a truth deeper than circumstance. Tonight, as you breathe and rest, imagine sitting across from this silent presence. It does not speak, it does not move, but it looks at you with calm awareness. It does not demand you change, it only invites you to notice. And as you sit together, you realize you are not afraid. The silence is not empty. It is filled with companionship, with a presence that has always been with you. To understand yourself, then, is not only to examine your thoughts and actions, but to recognize the silent companion who has been with you all along. It is the witness behind the noise, the steady presence within the storm, the quiet companion of your entire life. When you embrace it, you discover a truth both humbling and comforting. You were never alone, and you never will be. We live surrounded by words. They build our conversations, shape our thoughts, carry our stories. Yet words alone are not enough. Without space around them, they collapse into noise. Imagine reading a page without spacing between words, or listening to speech without pause. It would be unbearable. The philosopher notices this, and extends the lesson further. Just as words need space to carry meaning, so too do our lives. The spaces around words, the silences, the pauses, the gaps, are not emptiness but structure. They hold meaning together. At first, this seems paradoxical. How can silence, which says nothing, be as important as speech, which says everything? But listen closely. The power of a question often lies in the pause after it, when silence hangs heavy and the listener begins to feel. The weight of a confession lies not only in the words spoken, but in the stillness that follows. Even love, when expressed, carries more truth in the quiet touch after the words than in the words themselves. The space around words is not absence but depth. Think of a poem. Every line is shaped not only by what is written, but by what is left unsaid. The pauses invite the reader to lean in, to fill the silence with imagination. Philosophy suggests that our lives work the same way. What you do not say, the pauses you allow, the silences you keep. These shape you as much as what you speak. The self is not only in expression, but in restraint, not only in noise, but in quiet. Yet we fear silence. In conversation, pauses make us anxious. We rush to fill them with chatter, fearing that silence means awkwardness or disconnection. But the philosopher sees otherwise. Silence in dialogue is intimacy. It allows space for listening, for reflection, for the heart to catch up with the tongue. When you resist filling every gap, you discover that silence itself communicates patience, presence, respect. The space around words can say what words alone cannot. This is true not only in speaking but in thinking. Your thoughts rush, one after another, tumbling noisily. Without pauses, they blur together, leaving you exhausted. But when you create space, Through reflection, through breath, through quiet, your thoughts settle, meaning emerges. Just as words on a page require spacing to be readable, thoughts require silence to be understood. Without it, you drown in noise. With it, you find clarity. Philosophy itself depends on this principle. Socrates asked questions, but more importantly, he waited for answers. The silence in between gave birth to truth. Buddhist koans present paradoxical statements, but their meaning emerges not from explanation but from sitting quietly with them. Even in sacred texts, the spaces, the pauses between verses, the gaps left unexplained, hold as much wisdom as the words. The philosopher learns that truth often hides in silence, waiting patiently to be heard. The space around words also reveals honesty. Anyone can speak endlessly, but sincerity shows in the pauses, the hesitation before admitting something vulnerable, the quiet after saying, "I love you," the stillness after apology. These moments show that words alone cannot carry the whole of truth. The truth is in the silence that surrounds them, in the openness that allows feeling to breathe. Imagine sitting with someone you trust. Conversation fades, but you are not uncomfortable. The silence is not awkward but full. The space around the words spoken becomes a kind of presence, a companionship deeper than sound. This is the essence of understanding, not filling every moment, but allowing space for what cannot be said. But the lesson does not stop with conversation. The space around words mirrors the space you need around experiences. If you rush from one moment to another without pause, life becomes like a page without spacing, crowded, unreadable. You need the gaps, the quiet morning before work, the pause at sunset, the stillness before sleep. These are the spaces that make your life legible to you. Without them, you may live, but you will not understand. The philosopher reminds you that space is not wasted time, it is essential. Just as white space on a page allows words to breathe, silence in your day allows you to breathe. It is in these pauses that self-understanding deepens. You notice not only what you have said and done, but how it feels, how it shapes you, how it connects to the larger story of your life. Consider how breath works once again. The inhale is a word, the exhale is another, but it is the pause between them that gives rhythm. Life is not only in the action but in the interval. By noticing this, you learn that presence is not about constant activity, but about honoring the spaces between. Tonight, as you rest, listen not only to your thoughts, but to the silence that surrounds them. Pay attention not only to the words you recall, but to the spaces in between. Notice how silence holds you, how it frames your experiences, how it gives shape to meaning. Do not fear it. Trust it. The space around words is not emptiness but fullness. The fullness of being, of presence, of truth. To understand yourself is to recognize that you are not only what you say or think, you are also the silence that surrounds those words. You are the pauses, the gaps, the intervals. You are shaped as much by what you withhold as by what you express. And in learning to embrace these spaces, you discover a wisdom deeper than speech. The quiet truth that meaning is born not only in words, but in the silence that holds them. Silence is often imagined as surface, a still pond, a quiet room, a pause in conversation. But silence has depth, and beneath it lie roots that reach into the hidden ground of your being. These roots are not always visible, but they hold you steady, drawing nourishment from what lies beyond words. To understand yourself, you must learn not only to sit in silence, but to explore what grows beneath it. The roots beneath silence are the unseen foundations of your identity, your resilience, your wisdom. At first, silence feels empty. You hear only the absence of noise, and perhaps you feel restless, eager to fill the gap. But stay longer, and you begin to notice what silence contains. Beneath the quiet surface, old emotions stir, forgotten memories rise, unspoken desires whisper. These are the roots, reaching upward from the soil of your unconscious. They remind you that silence is not blankness but connection, a bridge between the seen and unseen parts of yourself. The philosopher understands that silence is not merely an external condition, but an inner practice. When you grow still, you allow your roots to be felt. Just as a tree's strength lies not in its visible branches, but in its hidden roots, your strength lies not in outward activity, but in the grounding you find beneath silence. To ignore this is to live shallow, swayed by every wind. To honor it is to discover stability, a quiet resilience that holds you even in storms. These roots are not always easy to face. Some carry pain, old wounds buried, unresolved grief, truths you have avoided. In silence, they rise again, demanding recognition. This is why many fear stillness. It exposes what lies beneath. Yet the philosopher sees in this confrontation an opportunity. Roots that remain hidden cannot heal, but roots that are acknowledged can nourish. To face them is not to weaken but to deepen. Roots beneath silence also connect you to others. Though each person appears separate, beneath the surface, roots intertwine. Human beings share stories, fears, longings, all invisible yet real. In silence, you sense this connection. Sitting with another person in quiet presence, you feel linked without words. The roots remind you that belonging is not built only on speech, but also on shared silence. Nature reflects this truth. A forest stands because its roots are entangled. Each tree, though individual above ground, shares strength below. In the same way, you are not sustained only by your visible self, but by the hidden roots of experience, memory, and connection. Silence allows you to feel these hidden networks. It shows you that you are not an isolated being, but part of a greater web of life. The philosopher also notices that roots grow slowly, invisibly. You cannot see their work day by day, yet they transform soil, break stone, draw water. Likewise, the roots of self-understanding do not reveal themselves in sudden bursts. They deepen quietly, nourished by silence, strengthened by patience. To expect immediate clarity is to misunderstand. You must sit, listen, wait. Only then do the roots reveal their strength. Imagine yourself as a tree standing in stillness. Above, branches sway in the wind, but below, roots spread deep. The winds of life, success, failure, joy, grief, come and go, but the roots hold steady. Where do your roots reach? Into memory, into love, into the wisdom of silence. Even when storms rage, you remain standing, not because the winds are gentle, but because the roots are strong. Silence also teaches that roots draw nourishment from darkness. They grow in soil, unseen, in spaces where light does not reach. This is a reminder that not all growth is visible. Not all wisdom comes from light. Some of your deepest lessons emerge in shadow, in grief, in solitude, in doubt. These too are roots, quietly feeding your life. The philosopher honors these dark places, knowing they contribute to your wholeness. And yet, roots are not only heavy, they are also creative. From the ground they draw life upward, allowing blossoms, fruits and leaves to appear. So too with you, the roots beneath silence nourish your outer life. The patience you cultivate in silence becomes kindness in speech. The strength you find in quiet becomes courage in action. The clarity you discover alone becomes wisdom you share with others. The hidden roots make visible growth possible. But to feel these roots, you must pause. You must allow silence long enough for them to stir. Rushing through life, you skim the surface. You live only in branches, swayed by wind. But when you sit in quiet, breathing slowly, you begin to feel the ground beneath. You sense the roots stretching out, deep and wide, holding you. This awareness brings calm. You realize you are steadier than you thought, connected more deeply than you knew. Philosophy reminds you that silence is not escape, but grounding. It is not retreat from life, but return to foundation. The roots beneath silence are not separate from who you are. They are who you are. They hold your history, your depth, your resilience. To deny them is to live shallow. To embrace them is to live rooted. Tonight, as you rest, imagine your roots reaching into silence. Feel them spreading beneath you, touching memory, drawing strength from experiences both joyful and painful. Notice how they hold you steady, how they nourish you without demanding attention. Let this image remind you that beneath all noise, you are sustained by something deeper, something patient, something unshaken. To understand yourself is to know these roots, not only the visible branches of your actions, but the hidden foundations of your being. The roots beneath silence are your strength, your connection, your truth. When you honor them, you discover that you are not fragile but grounded, not empty but nourished, not isolated but deeply entwined with life itself. Not all weight is heavy. Some burdens press harshly, bending your shoulders, stealing your breath. But there is another kind of weight. Gentle, grounding, steady. It is the weight of a blanket on a winter night, the weight of a friend's hand resting on yours, the weight of responsibility that gives life shape rather than breaking it. Philosophy reminds us that not every burden is to be resisted. Some weights, carried well, give meaning. The gentle weight teaches you that to understand yourself is not to avoid all heaviness, but to recognize which weights anchor you rather than crush you. At first, weight feels like opposition. You want to be light, free, unbound. You see heaviness as limitation, a reminder of gravity, of imperfection. But freedom without grounding can feel like drifting. A life without weight may float, aimlessly, rootless, unsteady. The philosopher sees in gentle weight the paradox of existence. You need both grounding and openness. Just as a kite needs the tug of a string to soar, so too do you need certain weights to give your freedom shape. Consider love. Love is not light. It carries responsibility, compromise, vulnerability. Yet these are not crushing burdens but gentle weights that give the relationship meaning. Without them, love remains shallow, fleeting. With them, it deepens, steadies, endures. Or think of memory. The weight of those you have lost. The grief never fully leaves, but it softens, becoming a quiet presence that reminds you of love's depth. This weight is not punishment. It is gentle, reminding you that to care deeply is to carry deeply. The gentle weight also shows in the small rituals of life. The daily duties you perform, cooking, cleaning, working, caring, may feel repetitive, but they hold you. They create rhythm, continuity, grounding. To resist them entirely is to float disconnected. To embrace them is to find steadiness. The philosopher notes that meaning is rarely in dramatic gestures, but in these quiet weights, carried daily, shaping who you are. But how do you tell the difference between crushing weight and gentle weight? The answer lies in how it feels in your being. Crushing weight drains, suffocates, leaves no room to breathe. Gentle weight steadies, focuses, roots you. Crushing weight says you cannot move. Gentle weight says you belong here. Now, to understand yourself, you must learn to distinguish, to release the burdens that crush and to embrace the weights that ground. Gentle weight is often invisible to others. No one may notice the responsibility you carry for a family, the quiet effort of keeping promises, the steady practice of self-discipline, but you notice. And when carried with acceptance, these weights become sources of quiet strength. They are not glamorous, but they are foundational. Like stones at the base of a wall, they hold you upright, even if unseen. There is a physical truth here too. Weighted blankets calm the nervous system. Gentle pressure reassures the body, reminding it of safety. In the same way, the gentle weight of responsibility, memory, or love can soothe the spirit. You may resist it at first, longing for total freedom. But over time you realize that this weight does not bind you, it comforts. It reminds you that you are part of something larger than yourself. Philosophy suggests that without some weight, the self cannot grow. A tree without the weight of roots would topple. A person without the weight of responsibility would remain shallow. The gentle weight is what stretches you, grounds you, teaches resilience. It prevents you from being scattered by every breeze of desire or fear. It teaches you that strength is not the absence of weight, but the ability to carry with grace. Yet carrying gently requires awareness. Too often, you pile on unnecessary burdens. Expectations that are not yours, fears borrowed from others, demands rooted in comparison. These are not gentle but crushing. The practice of philosophy is to discern which weights are truly mine, which give me strength, and which only break me. To let go of false burdens is as important as embracing the ones that belong. Imagine yourself standing still, a stone in each hand. One is heavy, sharp, cutting your palm. The other is smooth, steady, warm. The first weakens you, the second grounds you. Life constantly asks you to choose between the two. Sometimes, without noticing, you hold the wrong one, and exhaustion follows. But when you choose the gentle weight, the responsibility you accept with love, the truth you carry with integrity, the discipline you embrace with patience, you discover that weight can bring peace. The gentle weight also teaches humility. It reminds you that you cannot be entirely free of burden. Every life carries something. To imagine otherwise is to deny reality, but by accepting this, you find calm. You stop striving for weightlessness, and instead seek the right kind of weight. This shift transforms suffering into meaning. The philosopher Viktor Frankl observed that those who bore suffering with purpose could endure almost anything. This is the essence of the gentle weight. It gives even hardship a place within meaning. Tonight, as you rest, think of the gentle weights you carry. Perhaps it is the memory of someone you love, the responsibility of someone who depends on you, the daily rituals that keep you steady. Notice how these do not crush but hold. Let yourself feel their presence as grounding, not prison. And as you breathe, release the unnecessary burdens, the crushing expectations, the false weights that never belonged to you. what remains is lighter, steadier, truer. To understand yourself is to know which weights to carry and which to release. It is to recognize that some burdens are not burdens at all, but gifts, anchors of love, responsibility, memory, and truth. These gentle weights give your life shape, depth, and stability. When you learn to embrace them, you discover that strength is not about escaping weight, but about carrying what is yours with grace. We often think of time as a relentless flow, an endless river carrying us forward without rest. Seconds tick, minutes march, hours unfold, days vanish. But within this flow there are pauses, small, almost invisible breaks that hold their own quiet significance. Just as music is shaped not only by sound but by silence, life is shaped not only by action but by its pauses. To understand yourself, you must learn to notice these pauses within time, the subtle spaces where life does not push forward, but waits, breathes, and invites you to see differently. Consider the moment between inhaling and exhaling, a pause so brief, yet within it, there is stillness. Your body hangs between two movements, not yet finished, not yet begun. This small pause mirrors life's larger rhythms. There are seasons when everything moves, and seasons when everything waits, but the modern mind resists waiting. We fill pauses with noise, distraction, urgency. We check phones, chase tasks, scroll endlessly. The pause terrifies us, because in its stillness, we might hear something we have been avoiding, the truth of our own existence. Philosophy tells us that pauses are not empty. They are full. A pause between words allows meaning to settle. A pause in a conversation allows listening to deepen. A pause in a journey allows the traveler to understand where they have been and where they are going. To live without pauses is to live without reflection, without the chance to notice yourself in the stream of time. You may reach the end of your days having rushed so fast that you never truly arrived anywhere. The ancients knew this. The Stoics practiced daily reflection, carving small pauses within time to step outside the rush. Zen philosophy embraces pauses as the very heart of awareness. Even in nature, pauses are everywhere. The stillness of dawn before the world stirs, the hush of dusk before darkness falls, the waiting silence before the first drop of rain. These pauses remind us that time is not a constant race but a rhythm, and rhythm requires silence as much as sound. The pause is also where transformation happens. Think of the soil in winter, seemingly lifeless, yet secretly preparing for spring, or the silence between two heartbeats, sustaining the rhythm of life itself. In these pauses, unseen growth takes place. So too in your life, moments of waiting, stillness, even boredom, may feel wasted, but they are not. They are part of the rhythm that allows meaning to ripen. Without pause, there is no depth, only speed. Yet embracing pauses is difficult. To pause is to confront emptiness, and emptiness can feel like a threat. Who are you when you are not doing, not moving, not achieving? Many avoid the question by filling every silence. But when you resist the urge to escape and allow yourself to sit in a pause, you discover something profound. You are still here. Your being is not dependent on constant activity. You exist even in stillness, and in that realization lies freedom. Imagine a day filled entirely with noise and action, then a single moment of silence, perhaps standing in the doorway as the sun sets, or resting your hand on a cup of warm tea. That pause colors the whole day differently. It opens space within time for awareness, gratitude, presence. This is not wasted time. It is the very essence of living fully. To pause is to step out of time's tyranny and glimpse eternity, however briefly. The philosopher Martin Heidegger spoke of being toward death, the awareness that our time is finite. When you pause within time, you begin to feel this truth. You notice how fragile each moment is, how quickly it passes, how precious it becomes when seen clearly. The pause reveals not despair but clarity. This is your life, here, now, and once noticed, you can no longer rush through blindly. The pause anchors you to presence. Even language reveals this. The punctuation mark, a comma, a period, a dash, gives structure to meaning. Without them, words blur into confusion. Pauses in writing mirror pauses in life, guiding rhythm, shaping understanding. Without pauses, meaning collapses into noise. Life without pauses is much the same, a blur without depth, exhausting and hollow. Pauses also allow kindness. In the rush of time, we often react rather than respond. But when you pause, before speaking in anger, before judging, before deciding, you create space for compassion. The pause opens a door between impulse and action, giving you the freedom to choose differently. In this way, the pause becomes a tool of self-mastery, a quiet power that shapes who you are becoming. Think, too, of memory. Often what you remember most are not the continuous flows but the pauses, the still gaze across a table, the silence before someone's answer, the breathless moment before saying yes or goodbye. These pauses hold meaning because they reveal what lies beneath action, presence, feeling, truth. To practice quiet philosophy is to welcome these pauses within time, rather than fearing them. You can begin simply by noticing the pause at the end of each breath, by sitting without reaching for a distraction, by allowing silence to stand unfilled. Over time, you may find that these pauses are not interruptions but invitations to listen more deeply, to see more clearly, to live more honestly. The pause is not against time. It is part of time's rhythm, and just as music without rests is chaos, a life without pauses is confusion. To understand yourself, you must learn to pause, not once, not rarely, but daily, gently, deliberately. For in these pauses, you will find that time is not only passing, it is also offering you the chance to be here, truly here, before the next moment sweeps you away. There are moments when your mind feels restless, as though it is pacing inside you, waiting for something undefined. Perhaps you have known this feeling, sitting in a quiet room, unable to focus, yet unable to rest, as if some invisible event were about to arrive. This is the waiting mind, a state of expectancy that lingers like a held breath. It is not quite patience, nor is it simply distraction. It is the awareness of a future that has not yet come, coupled with the discomfort of being caught between what is and what might be. The waiting mind often arises in modern life. We wait for messages to arrive, for notifications to appear, for opportunities to unfold. But beneath these small daily waits lies a larger truth. Much of our existence is shaped by waiting, from the child who waits to grow, to the elder who waits for memory to fade. Life can feel like a series of thresholds, each demanding patience. The waiting mind, however, struggles with this. It pulls against time, reaching forward into the unknown, and in doing so, it forgets the present moment. Philosophers have long recognized the paradox of waiting. Søren Kierkegaard wrote about the anxiety of anticipation, how waiting reveals both hope and dread. The thing awaited may never come, or if it does, it may not arrive in the way imagined. Yet still, the mind waits. In that waiting lies a mirror. You learn what you truly desire, what you truly fear. Waiting strips away pretense and exposes longing in its barest form. To understand yourself, you must pay attention to what your waiting mind leans toward. There is a certain quiet wisdom in realizing that the waiting mind is not an enemy, but a teacher. When you notice yourself caught in restless expectancy, you can pause and ask, what am I waiting for? Often the answer is not a thing but a feeling. Peace, love, recognition, freedom. These cannot be delivered like a package at your door. They require cultivation within. By observing the waiting mind, you discover what is missing in your own presence. And yet, waiting also carries gifts. Think of the moments before dawn, when the world holds its breath in darkness, waiting for light, or the seconds before music begins, when silence deepens expectation. The waiting mind amplifies attention. It sharpens the senses, heightens awareness. Waiting for a loved one to arrive at a train station, every passing moment seems dense with significance. You notice the shuffle of feet, the whistle of air brakes, the ticking of the station clock. In this way, waiting brings you closer to life's textures, teaching you to notice details you might otherwise overlook. But if left unchecked, the waiting mind becomes a trap. Instead of living, you are always waiting to live. You postpone joy until after success, postpone rest until after achievement, postpone meaning until after some imagined moment arrives. Life slips past in this endless anticipation. To escape, you must learn to shift your relationship with waiting, not to banish it, but to inhabit it fully. One way is to reframe waiting as being. If you are waiting in line, notice your breath. If you are waiting for a response, observe your own thoughts rising and falling. Waiting becomes an invitation to return to yourself, to practice presence in the midst of uncertainty. In this way, waiting transforms from wasted time into fertile time. It becomes a practice of quiet philosophy, to sit in expectation without clinging, to live in patience without resentment. The waiting mind is deeply tied to hope, Hope is beautiful, but it can also bind. To wait for life to improve is to imply that it is not enough as it is. And yet when you release the desperation of waiting, hope becomes gentler. You still look toward the future, but without abandoning the present. You allow possibility to inspire you, not imprison you. Buddhist teachings remind us that waiting often emerges from attachment to outcomes, to timelines, to imagined futures. To free the waiting mind is not to reject hope, but to loosen the grip of expectation. You can hope for a better tomorrow, while also living today, fully. You can wait for change without losing yourself in the waiting. Think, too, of the ways waiting shapes memory. Many of your most vivid recollections are not of the event itself, but of the anticipation. The night before a journey, the hours before a confession, the days before a reunion. These waiting moments hold a unique intensity. They remind you that life is not only made of arrivals, but of the spaces before arrival. To dismiss waiting is to dismiss half of experience. To understand yourself is to accept the waiting mind as part of being human. It reveals your longings, sharpens your senses, teaches patience, and asks for presence. Instead of filling every pause with distraction, try meeting the waiting mind with openness. Sit with its restlessness. Notice the ache of anticipation. In this noticing, you are no longer imprisoned by waiting, you are transformed by it. Ultimately, the waiting mind is a mirror of mortality. Life itself is a wait for seasons to turn, for bodies to age, for death to arrive. But in recognizing this, you are invited not into despair but into deeper living. To wait consciously is to acknowledge time's passing while refusing to be swallowed by it. It is to recognize that even while you wait for tomorrow, you are alive today, and that perhaps is enough. Imagine sitting in a theater, the lights dimmed, the audience hushed. Before you, a heavy curtain hangs, concealing the stage. You know there is something behind it. Actors waiting, props arranged, a story about to unfold. But until the curtain rises, all remains hidden. Our minds often work in the same way. Thoughts, like actors, linger behind the curtain, rehearsing, pressing forward, waiting for the right cue to emerge. What you call your consciousness is not the whole theater, but simply the stage where certain thoughts are allowed to appear. Most of us forget this. We believe that whatever appears in our awareness is the whole truth. Yet behind the curtain of thought lies a deeper reservoir, memories unacknowledged, emotions unprocessed, desires unspoken. The curtain does not erase them. It simply hides them until the right moment or trigger draws them forward. Sometimes, what emerges feels coherent, like a polished performance. Other times, it feels messy, intrusive, or confusing, as though the curtain opened at the wrong time and let an unprepared actor stumble into the spotlight. Philosophers and psychologists alike have wrestled with this mystery. Freud spoke of the unconscious as the hidden stage manager, shaping what thoughts are allowed to appear. Eastern traditions too remind us that the self we experience is but a thin layer, a projection. To peer behind the curtain is to recognize how much of who we are remains concealed from ordinary awareness. The play is larger than the stage. The mind is larger than its thoughts. When you observe the curtain itself, you notice how it rises and falls with attention. For instance, when you sit quietly in meditation, the curtain becomes more transparent. Thoughts drift in slowly, sometimes awkwardly, revealing the gap between them. You realize you are not the actors, nor the stage, but the audience, watching, waiting, witnessing. This perspective is unsettling at first. You begin to question, if I am the audience, who controls the curtain? Who decides which thought appears? This question leads you into paradox. Perhaps no one controls it fully. Perhaps thoughts are less like actors waiting for instruction and more like clouds drifting across the sky, appearing and vanishing by conditions outside your will. The curtain, then, is not an obstacle but a reminder. You do not own every thought that passes through you. They are not possessions but visitors. To understand yourself, you must learn the art of hospitality, allowing thoughts to come and go without clinging too tightly to them. Still, some curtains are heavier than others. Trauma, grief, shame, these can act like thick drapes, refusing to rise. They block light, keep the stage dark, and prevent certain truths from being seen. You sense their weight without knowing their details, as though the play has been paused indefinitely. In such moments, self-understanding requires gentleness. Pulling at the curtain too quickly can cause more harm than good. Instead, you sit with its presence, acknowledging that something waits behind, even if you cannot yet see. Other curtains, by contrast, are flimsy, fluttering in every breeze. These belong to the restless mind that refuses silence. Thoughts stream constantly onto the stage, one performance after another, leaving no space for stillness. Here, the challenge is different: to slow down, to breathe, to recognize that not every thought deserves center stage. Some performances are trivial, some are illusions, some are echoes of voices not your own. By learning to let the curtain fall gently between thoughts, you create pauses where clarity can emerge. The metaphor of curtains also reveals something about identity. You are not just the performer of your thoughts, nor the director. You are also the stage itself, vast, open, capable of holding countless performances. The curtains shift, the actors change, the scenes evolve, but the stage remains. This insight is echoed in Buddhist philosophy. The self you cling to is not fixed, but a stream of appearances, rising and falling like plays behind the curtain. To identify too strongly with any single role is to forget the wider theater of your being. Waiting for the curtain to rise can teach patience. Think of times when answers did not arrive quickly, when your mind searched for clarity but found only silence. In hindsight, you often realize the silence was necessary. The curtain rises only when the story is ready. Forcing it early leads to confusion. In this way, your mind teaches you timing, the wisdom of allowing understanding to emerge in its own season. But curtains can also deceive. Sometimes what they reveal is not truth, but performance. A smile on stage may conceal sorrow behind. A thought of confidence may hide deep insecurity. To navigate this, you must cultivate discernment. Ask yourself, is what I see the play, or the reality behind it? The curtain does not just reveal, it can also distract. Understanding yourself means noticing when thoughts are disguises, costumes masking deeper feelings. The curtain of thought is not something to destroy. It is part of being human. Instead, you are invited to watch it with awareness. Notice when it rises, when it falls, what it reveals, what it conceals. In doing so, you develop a more compassionate relationship with yourself. You no longer demand constant clarity. You no longer fear the silence between performances. You learn to trust that whatever lies behind the curtain, you have the strength to meet it. In the end, the metaphor leads back to simplicity. You are sitting in the theater of your mind, and the curtain is always moving, rising, falling, swaying with the winds of thought. Behind it is mystery, depth, potential. On stage, appearances come and go, and you, quietly watching, begin to understand. You are not the curtain, nor the actors, but the vastness that holds it all. The play is temporary. The stage is eternal. Everywhere there is light, there are shadows. The tree standing in the morning sun casts its shape across the ground. The flame of a candle stretches a wavering darkness behind the cup on your table. Even in the human heart, where joy shines, sorrow quietly extends its shade. We often think of shadows as something to avoid, as if they are marks of failure, places of fear, or reminders of what we would rather not see. Yet, what is a shadow except proof that there is light nearby? Without light, there can be no shadow at all. To explore yourself is to recognize how shadows and light dance together within you. The qualities you celebrate, kindness, courage, patience, are illuminated by their opposites, the very tendencies you may wish to deny. The shadow of kindness is resentment, when generosity is ignored. The shadow of courage is fear, quivering in the same body that acts bravely. The shadow of patience is anger, simmering beneath the effort to wait. These shadows do not diminish the light. They define it, shape it, give it contour. Without them, your virtues would be flat and invisible, like sunlight that fills the sky but shows no form. Carl Jung spoke of the shadow as the unconscious side of the self, containing what we repress, reject, or cannot face. In his view, wholeness comes not from denying the shadow, but from integrating it. To pretend you are only light is to fracture yourself, to create an image of purity that leaves you haunted by what you hide. But when you turn toward the shadow, not with judgment, but with curiosity, you discover that it carries wisdom. Anger reveals what you value. Fear shows you where you feel fragile. Resentment signals a need for boundaries. In this sense, shadows are not enemies, but teachers. Think of the quiet evening walk when the sun dips low. Your shadow stretches long and exaggerated, taller than you, stranger than you. It looks distorted, almost comical, yet it is yours. Similarly, your inner shadows may feel larger than life, overwhelming, disproportionate. But like the evening shadow, they are cast by something simple, the light of your awareness. As the sun moves, the shadow shortens again. It is not fixed, not permanent. This realization is a comfort. the shadow self, no matter how daunting, shifts with perspective. There is also beauty in shadows. Artists know that contrast gives depth. A painting without shade appears flat, lifeless. Music without silence is noise. In the same way, a life without struggle would lack shape. Your scars give your story dimension. Your doubts sharpen your wisdom. Your mistakes ground your growth. To deny shadows is to deny the texture of your humanity. To embrace them is to find balance. A wholeness that glows not in spite of its darkness but through it. Yet embracing shadows requires courage. Often they come disguised as things you would rather avoid. Memories you regret, impulses you shame, fears you silence. They wait in the corners of the mind, whispering half-truths. To face them is not to indulge them blindly, but to hold them in the light of awareness. You can say, yes, I feel envy. Yes, I feel anger. Yes, I fear being forgotten. By naming them, you transform them. Shadows become less threatening when acknowledged. They are no longer monsters under the bed, but shapes revealed by the lamp. Sometimes, though, shadows resist illumination. They grow thick, oppressive, convincing you that light has vanished. Depression, grief, despair. These are shadows that seem to consume the sun itself. In such times, philosophy reminds you of patience. The darkest night still moves toward dawn. No shadow is eternal, for it depends on light. To endure your deepest shadows is to trust that the light, though unseen, still exists. You breathe, you wait, and eventually, a sliver of brightness returns. Even the heaviest curtains cannot stop the day forever. Shadows also appear in relationships. You project what you cannot accept in yourself onto others, accusing them of traits you secretly carry. You may criticize someone's arrogance while hiding your own pride, or condemn another's weakness while fearing your own vulnerability. This projection is a shadow at work, not to shame you, but to reveal where you have yet to make peace with yourself. If you listen, the shadow teaches you compassion. You realize that others mirror parts of you, both cherished and denied. In this way, shadows guide you toward humility. To recognize your flaws is to soften your judgment of others. To see your darkness is to deepen your appreciation for their light. This humility does not weaken you. It makes you more human, more real. For no person is only radiant or only dark. Each of us walks as a moving balance of both, our lives painted in gradients rather than absolutes. Imagine standing at twilight, that in-between time when light and shadow mingle. The sun has not fully set, the darkness not fully risen. The world glows in a soft ambiguity, neither bright nor black. This twilight is what it feels like to accept yourself fully. You are not striving to be pure light. You are not consumed by shadow. You are both, together, and in that union there is peace. In the end, the lesson of shadows is not about banishing darkness but about perspective. Stand too close to the shadow, and it feels overwhelming. Step back, and you see it as part of a greater picture. Understand that every shadow proves the presence of light, and suddenly, even your struggles shimmer with meaning. The parts of you you once feared become guides. The flaws you once hid become bridges of empathy. Shadows become light, not by disappearing, but by being recognized. They reveal that illumination is not perfect brightness but harmony, the interplay of what shines and what darkens. And in learning this, you discover a truth both simple and profound. You do not need to fear your shadow, for it is made entirely of light. Life rarely changes in grand explosions. More often, it shifts in quiet, steady motions, like the gradual turning of the earth. You do not feel the planets spin, yet the stars move overhead. You do not hear time passing, yet morning arrives without fail. The slow turning is the rhythm of existence, imperceptible in the moment, but undeniable in its accumulation. When you reflect on yourself, you may long for sudden revelations, quick answers, decisive transformations. But most self-understanding unfolds not in leaps but in turns, small, patient, almost invisible. Consider how rivers carve valleys. It is not through one rush of water, but through centuries of flowing, drop by drop, wearing stone into shape. In the same way, your habits, your thoughts, your choices slowly carve the landscape of your life. You rarely notice the erosion as it happens. Only later, looking back, do you see how deeply the river of your being has cut its path. The impatience to be different now, instantly, blinds you to the truth. Real change is the work of the slow turning. Philosophy has always wrestled with time. Heraclitus said that everything flows, that you cannot step into the same river twice. He was pointing to the endless turning, the ceaseless becoming. Yet in our restless age, we often resist this truth. We chase instant clarity, rapid progress, immediate peace. We treat life like a problem to be solved quickly, rather than a turning to be lived slowly. But wisdom, like fruit, ripens at its own pace. No amount of urgency will sweeten it before its time. Imagine sitting under a tree in late summer, watching its leaves shift almost imperceptibly toward autumn. You cannot see the exact moment a leaf changes color, yet one morning the tree is ablaze with red. The transformation was not sudden but gradual, invisible in its unfolding. This is how you change too. Day by day unnoticed, until one morning you wake and realize you are no longer the person you once were. The slow turning is not only about growth, but about decay. Just as rivers shape stone, so too does time wear away your illusions. The beliefs you clung to in youth crumble, the ambitions you once thought essential fade. This erosion can feel like loss, but it is also clearing. It makes space for new understanding, new peace. To resist decay is to cling to what must change. To accept it is to join the natural rhythm, the slow turning that takes everything and gives everything. There is humility in this perspective. You realize that no effort, no matter how grand, escapes time's patient movement. Empires rise and fall, mountains wear into dust, even stars burn out. Against such a backdrop, your own struggles seem both smaller and more bearable. The shame that feels unbearable today will soften tomorrow. The wound that feels permanent will scar over. Nothing remains exactly as it is. The slow turning makes sure of that. And yet, within this slow turning, there is agency. Though you cannot control the turning itself, you can choose how to align with it. You can fight against the seasons, resenting every winter, or you can recognize their necessity. You can cling to yesterday's self, or you can walk alongside the turning, letting it guide you to tomorrow's version of you. The choice is not whether to turn or you must. The choice is whether to resist or to flow. Think of the wheel. Its turning seems endless, repetitive, circular, but from above, you see that the wheel also carries the cart forward. So too with your life. The days may feel repetitive, their routines dull, yet with every turn you move. Growth often feels like circling the same lessons, repeating the same mistakes, revisiting the same doubts, but each time, you are carried a little farther, seeing a little more, moving a little closer to yourself. The slow turning also reminds you of patience with others. Just as you are shaped gradually, so too are they. Expecting someone to change instantly is like demanding a seed bloom overnight. You can nurture, encourage, water, and wait, but you cannot rush the process. To honor the slow turning is to honor the dignity of another's becoming. It is to accept that growth is not measured in days but in years, sometimes lifetimes. There is also comfort in remembering that the slow turning holds you, even when you do nothing. You need not force the sun to rise. You need not command your heart to beat. The turning of life carries you forward, regardless. When you feel lost, stuck, or stagnant, remind yourself even now the earth is spinning, the seasons shifting, the stars wheeling overhead. You are moving, even if you cannot yet see where. In quiet philosophy, the slow turning teaches the paradox of stillness in motion. You sit, silent, unmoving, yet within you cells divide, thoughts arise, breath flows. The universe itself spins around you. You are always both still and turning. To embrace this paradox is to rest more deeply. You need not rush, for you are already moving. You need not cling, for you are already changing. At the heart of the slow turning lies trust. Trust that time will carry you. Trust that growth will come. Trust that even your darkest seasons are turning toward spring. This trust does not mean passivity. You still act, choose, live, but you act with a gentleness born of knowing you are not in control of everything, nor do you need to be. The slow turning holds you, as it holds the rivers, the trees, the stars. In the end, the slow turning is less about speed, and more about direction. It whispers, be patient, but be steady. Do not demand fireworks, notice the candle flame. Do not seek sudden awakenings, honor the long dawn. Your life, yourself, your understanding, they are unfolding right now, as surely as the earth spins beneath your feet. And in this recognition, you find peace. You are always turning, always becoming, always arriving. Stillness is never just one thing. It is not a single surface, but a depth that reveals itself in layers, each quieter than the last. When you first sit in silence, What you hear is noise, the hum of appliances, the tick of a clock, the chatter of your own restless thoughts. This is the outer layer, the threshold. Stay a little longer, and the noise thins. Beneath it is another layer, the slow rhythm of breath, the faint pulse in your veins, the awareness that you are here. Go deeper still, and even these fade, until you arrive at a silence that feels less like absence and more like presence. This is the heart of stillness, layered like the earth, each level carrying you further inward. Most people never move past the first layer. They sit down, hear the roar of their minds, and decide stillness is impossible. They mistake the storm for the essence, never realizing it is only the surface weather. Philosophy teaches patience here. Just as the ocean is more than its waves, your stillness is more than its noise. The first layer is not the truth of you, only the beginning of the journey inward. Consider the forest. Stand at its edge, and all you hear are birds calling, branches creaking, insects buzzing. Walk a little deeper, and the sounds shift. They do not vanish, but they soften, replaced by the hush of wind filtered through layers of trees. Deeper still, and silence gathers like mist, thickening until the forest floor feels sacred. You discover that stillness is not an absence of sound, but a density of presence, a layering of quiet that changes how you perceive. The forest has not changed. You have. So it is within. At the surface of your mind lies constant motion, plans, regrets, half-formed worries. Beneath that are subtler movements, moods, impressions, vague longings. Beneath even those lies a silence that cannot be shaken. When you reach it, you feel as though you are no longer thinking silence, but being silence. And in that moment, you glimpse a truth. You are not your noise, not your passing moods, not even your thoughts. You are the depth beneath them. This layered stillness reveals why it is so difficult to understand yourself while rushing. If you only skim the surface, all you see are ripples. To know the depths, you must let the waters settle. You must have the courage to descend through the layers, not fleeing when the noise feels unbearable, not clinging when the silence begins to open. It takes time, patience, trust, but the reward is clarity, not clarity of answers, but clarity of presence. There is a paradox in these layers. Each deeper silence feels more intimate, yet also less personal. The first layer is your chatter, unmistakably yours. The next feels softer, as though it belongs not to you but to life itself. By the time you reach the deepest layer, you sense that stillness is not yours at all. It is simply there, universal, waiting. You do not create it, you uncover it, and in uncovering it, you uncover yourself. Think of peeling an onion. At first, the outer skin is dry, papery, fragile. Peel it away, and the layers beneath are denser, moister, more real. You cry as you go deeper, not from sadness, but from the sharpness of truth. So it is with silence. At first it feels thin, fragile, ready to break. But as you peel back the noise, you reach something sharper, something that brings tears, not pain, but recognition. Recognition of what has always been at your core. Philosophers like Plotinus spoke of turning inward as a kind of descent. He said the soul must peel away the outer husk of distraction, then the subtler husks of identity and thought, until it reaches the one, the source beyond all. Whether or not you accept his metaphysics, the metaphor rings true. Self-understanding is not achieved by adding more, but by peeling away. The layers of stillness are the path, guiding you from surface noise to inner presence. And yet, beware of thinking the deepest layer is the goal. Stillness is not a ladder to climb, or a mountain to conquer. It is more like a landscape, where each layer has its own beauty. The outer silence teaches you patience. The middle silence teaches you gentleness. The deepest silence teaches you vastness. Together they form the whole of your being, each layer essential. To rush past the first layers in search of the last is to miss their wisdom. Sometimes too, you may find yourself pulled back to the surface. A thought returns, a memory stirs, a worry reawakens. Do not see this as failure. Just as the tide moves in and out, so too does your stillness. Each return to the surface is another chance to descend. Each descent strengthens your capacity to stay. Over time, you learn to move through the layers with grace, trusting the silence is always there, even when buried. In daily life, remembering the layers changes how you respond. When anger arises, you recognize it as surface noise. Beneath it lies a quieter awareness that does not burn. When anxiety spins, you remind yourself it is only the top layer, and beneath it lies stillness. This does not erase difficulty, but it softens it. You realize that no storm can touch the depths. Even as waves crash, the ocean floor remains unmoved. To live with this awareness is to carry the forest within you, the layered silence that deepens with every step. It is to know that beneath the chatter, beneath the moods, beneath even thought, there is a place of quiet that belongs to you, and yet to more than you. A place that cannot be shaken, because it does not depend on circumstance. It is always there, waiting for you to return. And so, the layers of stillness become not an escape, but a homecoming. Each time you sit, breathe, and listen, you peel back another layer. Each time you sink deeper, you rediscover the silence that has held you all along. It does not demand you stay forever. It only asks that you remember, for in remembering, you carry its presence with you, layer upon layer, through all the noise of living. Fire is usually imagined as wild, loud, and consuming, a crackle, a blaze, a force that devours everything in its path. But not all flames burn this way. There are flames that glow with quiet intensity, steady and enduring, casting light without frenzy. Think of the small lamp in a dark room, or the candle that burns through the night while the world sleeps. Its flame is not loud, yet it changes everything. This quiet flame is a metaphor for the spirit within you, the enduring core of being that is soft in presence yet unyielding in strength. Many people mistake strength for noise, imagining that to be strong is to be forceful, dominant, or unrelenting. But strength can also be still. A flame can roar, yes, but it can also persist silently, unnoticed, and yet impossible to extinguish. Philosophy whispers of this strength, a kind that does not push outward but shines inward, illuminating what lies within. The quiet flame of your being is the part of you that has carried you through every storm, even when you did not notice it. It is not dramatic, but it is steady, and steadiness is its power. Picture the flame of a single candle in a dark cathedral. Around it, shadows stretch. Silence fills the air. The vastness feels overwhelming, and yet that one flame makes the space inhabitable. It does not chase away all shadows, but it holds enough light to soften the darkness. Your inner flame works like this. It does not eliminate all your fears, doubts, or confusions, but it provides enough light to remind you that the darkness is not everything. It whispers that you can endure, you can continue, you can see. The quiet flame also teaches something profound about self-understanding, that you are not defined by the size of your light, but by its persistence. The world often measures people by how brightly they shine, achievements, fame, loudness of presence. But quiet flames do not burn to be seen. They burn because it is their nature. You too carry a flame that does not need external validation to matter. Whether the world notices it or not, it glows within you, and in recognizing it, you begin to understand yourself, not as performance, but as being. Think of the hearth fire in an old home. Families gathered around it for warmth, meals were cooked upon it, stories were told in its glow, yet the flame itself never demanded attention. It simply gave what it could, without drama, without exhaustion. Such is your flame, not a spectacle, but a companion. When you turn inward and listen, you can feel its warmth, a reminder that you have carried your own source of light all along. There is also resilience in the quiet flame. Loud fires burn out quickly, consuming their fuel in bursts of fury, but a small flame, tended carefully, can last through the longest nights. Your strength lies not in sudden surges of power, but in steady endurance. Each time you have endured pain, loss, confusion, or uncertainty, it was this flame that carried you through. You may not have seen it then, but you survived because it glowed quietly beneath the surface, refusing to die out. Philosophers and mystics often describe this inner flame as the soul. Marcus Aurelius spoke of it as a guiding light within, one that must be protected from corruption by anger or despair. The Bhagavad Gita compared it to a lamp in a windless place, steady and unmoving. Both point to the same truth. There is something in you that persists quietly, even in chaos, and this is what you must learn to recognize. When you see it, you see yourself more clearly. But what does it mean to live with awareness of this flame? It means to stop looking for your worth in noise. It means to remember that endurance is its own kind of power. It means to trust the quiet strength that has carried you further than you once believed possible. In practical terms, it means pausing in the middle of doubt or fear, and asking, what is the flame within me saying now? Not the surface panic, not the loud narrative, but the deeper glow beneath. Sometimes, the flame feels fragile, as though it might go out. You worry that one more gust of wind, one more disappointment, One more failure, one more heartbreak, will extinguish it. And yet, somehow, it does not. Even when reduced to the faintest ember, it finds a way to glow. You wake up one more day, take one more breath, step forward one more time. This is the quiet miracle of your being. The flame endures, even when you think it cannot. There is also humility in the quiet flame. Unlike roaring fires, it does not seek to overwhelm. It simply exists, steady, small, yet essential. To recognize your flame is to recognize that you need not always be extraordinary, dramatic, or impressive. You are enough as you are, carrying the flame of life, of being, of persistence. Understanding yourself begins here, not with external achievement, but with quiet recognition of your inner light. Imagine walking into a dark room after a long day. You strike a match, light a candle, and the atmosphere shifts. Suddenly the room feels habitable, safe, softened. That candle does not make the room daylit, but it changes your experience entirely. Your flame changes your life this way. You cannot erase every shadow, but you can soften them, live within them, and move forward with courage. To know this is to walk with trust in yourself. And so, the quiet flame is not merely metaphor, but practice. Each time you sit in stillness, you feed it. Each time you breathe deeply in the middle of chaos, you shield it. Each time you act gently, rather than forcefully, you live by its light. It does not roar, it does not dazzle, but it sustains you, and that is what matters most. In the end, the flame within you is not something to create or earn. It has always been there. It is your task not to light it, but to notice it, to trust it, to let it guide you. And when you do, you discover that your quiet flame is enough to carry you through every darkness. There is a kind of listening that goes deeper than ears, deeper than language, deeper even than thought. It is the listening of the heart, a listening that does not rush to interpret, does not scramble for answers, does not hurry toward judgment. The listening heart does not try to solve, it tries to receive. It receives the world as it is, and in doing so it makes sense of things in a way words never could. Most of us spend our days listening only on the surface. We hear noise, chatter, news, advice, instructions, and we react. Our minds move quickly, forming opinions, defenses, and explanations. But this kind of listening rarely allows truth to reach us. It is like skimming across the surface of water, never feeling its depth. A listening heart asks you to pause, to step beneath that surface, and to let meaning emerge in its own time. When you listen with the heart, silence becomes part of the conversation. In silence, the noise of your own thoughts subsides, and you can hear what usually goes unnoticed. The subtle tremor in someone's voice, the hesitation between their words, the emotion hidden beneath their composure. Listening with the heart is not about analyzing these things, but about being present to them. It is about holding space for them without needing to control them. Imagine sitting with a friend who is struggling. You could rush to offer advice, tell them what to do, or try to lift their mood. But if you listen with the heart, you simply sit and receive. You allow their words to land. You notice their pauses. You honor their silence. And in this space something profound happens. They feel heard, truly heard, in a way that does not demand they change, but affirms they are allowed to be as they are. This is the gift of the listening heart. It does not fix. It does not control. It welcomes. And in that welcome people often find healing, because they sense they are not alone in their burden. The listening heart extends beyond relationships too. It also applies inward, to how you listen to yourself. So often, you ignore your own heart's whispers, because the mind is too loud. The mind insists you must be productive, you must be strong, you must keep going. But somewhere quieter, your heart may be saying, rest, or forgive, or wait, or even grieve. Listening to the heart means respecting these quiet truths. They are not always convenient, but they are always honest, and honesty with yourself is the foundation of understanding yourself. Philosophy, when stripped to its essence, is not just about reasoning but about listening to life, to the self, to existence itself. The Stoics spoke of aligning with nature, which is a kind of listening. Taoist thought spoke of will wei, effortless action, which begins with listening to the flow rather than forcing against it. Mystics from every tradition spoke of prayer, not as asking, but as listening for the divine. All of these point to the same truth. Listening is how we connect with what is deeper than us. Think of the heart as a chamber always open to receive. Unlike the mind, it does not argue. Unlike the body, It does not tire in the same way. It simply waits, like an open field ready for whatever may fall upon it. When you approach life with a listening heart, you stop treating every moment as something to conquer. You start treating it as something to meet. This shift softens you, makes you more patient, more receptive. It opens you not only to others, but to yourself. Listening to your heart does not mean indulging every impulse or desire. That is a misunderstanding. The heart's listening is not about whims. It is about truth. It recognizes what is real beneath the surface noise. It can tell the difference between what you want out of fear and what you long for out of love. It can tell the difference between restlessness and calling. It speaks with quiet clarity, if only you slow down enough to hear it. One of the hardest lessons is that the heart does not speak in language. It speaks in feeling, in intuition, in the sense that something is right or wrong, even when you cannot explain why. To trust this kind of listening is to surrender control, because it does not give you neat arguments. It gives you a direction, a sense, a subtle glow. The mind may protest, demanding certainty, but the listening heart knows certainty is not the point. Presence is. Try this. Sit in silence for a few minutes. Close your eyes, slow your breath, and simply ask, what is my heart saying? Do not expect words. Do not expect clarity. Just listen. Perhaps you will feel a heaviness that tells you something has gone unacknowledged. Perhaps you will feel a lightness, a release, a quiet reassurance. Whatever comes, honor it. This practice is the beginning of living with a listening heart. The listening heart also transforms conflict. When two people argue, they often hear only to respond, not to understand. But if one person listens with the heart, the dynamic shifts, the argument softens, the energy calms, the focus changes from winning to connecting. Even if agreement is not reached, understanding grows, and often, understanding is enough. In your own inner conflicts, the same holds true. You may have competing desires, fears, and duties. Instead of choosing sides, try listening. Listen to each voice within you with patience, as if each were a child needing to be heard. The listening heart does not judge one voice as right and another as wrong. It simply makes space for all, and in that space, clarity eventually arises. The beauty of the listening heart is that it does not promise perfection, but presence. You will still stumble, still misunderstand, still act from impulse, but the more you practice listening, the more you return to yourself, again and again. Over time, this practice shapes you into someone who lives not in reaction but in response, not in noise, but in quiet truth. To live with a listening heart is to live with openness. It is to accept that life is not something to be mastered, but something to be received. It is to trust that the truths you most need are already here, waiting in silence, waiting in stillness, waiting in you. And when you listen, you discover that the world, too, has been listening back all along. There is a silence that arrives at the end of every journey. It is not the silence of avoidance, not the silence of boredom, not the silence of things left unsaid. It is the silence that remains after everything has been spoken, after every thought has exhausted itself, after the heart has finished its listening. This silence is final not because it ends something, but because it completes something. It is the silence that comes when you no longer need to ask, no longer need to resist, no longer need to fill the space with anything at all. We spend much of our lives fearing silence. We fill it with music, chatter, television, and endless streams of distraction. We fear that in silence, we will feel our loneliness, or face truths we are not ready to accept. Yet when silence is allowed to arrive on its own terms, it becomes something entirely different. It is not emptiness. It is fullness. It is not absence. It is presence. The final silence is not about what is missing, but about what is finally whole. Think of a symphony. For hours, the orchestra swells with movement. Strings rising, drums pounding, horns announcing their bright command. The audience is carried through wave after wave of sound. But then, inevitably, the final note arrives. It is played, it lingers in the air, and then it fades. What remains is silence, but it is a silence unlike any other. It is not the same as the silence that came before the music began. This silence is charged with meaning, with memory, with the echo of everything that has passed. It is silence made sacred by what preceded it. The final silence in life carries this same quality. It comes at the end of conversations when nothing more needs to be said. It comes at the end of a long day when you lie down and your body finally rests. It comes at the end of grief, not because grief disappears, but because you no longer need to speak it aloud for it to be real. Silence arrives not as an intruder, but as a companion who has been waiting all along. Philosophers have often pointed to silence as the place where thought dissolves into something greater. Wittgenstein famously said, "Whereof one cannot speak, thereof one must be silent." Mystics across traditions have said the same in other ways, that words can only take you so far, and beyond that silence must do the rest. Silence in its final form is the language of the infinite. It is the closing of the circle where the need to name gives way to the acceptance of what simply is. To live with awareness of the final silence is not to be morbid. It is to live with reverence. Just as the awareness of death can sharpen your sense of life, so too can the awareness of silence deepen your appreciation of sound, of speech, of music, of connection. Knowing that everything ends in silence makes every word more precious. It makes every laugh, every story, every whispered confession shine brighter, because you know it will one day fade into stillness. The final silence is also within you, waiting at the end of every inner dialogue. Think of the mind when it worries. It churns, it circles, it repeats the same arguments endlessly. But sometimes, after enough cycles, there comes a moment when the mind sighs and lets go. The thought loses its grip, the worry dissolves. What remains is silence. Not the silence of defeat, but the silence of release. The silence that says, "I do not need to carry this anymore." That silence is final for that moment, and it brings peace. Silence has layers. The silence before birth, the silence after death, the silence between heartbeats, the silence between one breath and the next, the silence after forgiveness, the silence in meditation. Each of these carries its own weight, but all point toward the same truth. Silence is the ground on which everything rests. The final silence is the recognition of this ground. It is the moment you realize that silence is not the interruption of life, but its foundation. You can practice meeting this silence now, in small ways. When a conversation ends, resist the urge to fill the air. Let the silence stand. When you finish a task, instead of rushing to the next, pause for a moment. Sit in the silence that follows. When you meditate, do not just seek calm. Seek the silence beneath your thoughts. Each of these is a rehearsal for the greater silence, teaching you not to fear it, but to welcome it as the deepest form of completion. Imagine one evening, sitting alone as the sun sets. The day has been full of noise, conversations, work, the hum of the world around you. But now, everything slows. The light softens, the birds quiet, the air cools, you breathe, and then you do not need to say or think or do anything else. You simply sit in silence. That silence is not empty. It is filled with the presence of everything that has been lived, everything that has been felt, everything that has been understood. This is the final silence, not an ending, but a fullness too vast for words. And perhaps this is the great paradox. The final silence is not about absence, but about presence. It is the presence of all things resolved into stillness, the echo of everything held in one quiet space. To fear this silence is to misunderstand it. To meet it is to understand that life's truest completion is not in the noise we make, but in the quiet we return to. So let the final silence remind you, all your words, all your striving, all your searching will one day fall away. But this is not loss. This is not erasure. This is fulfillment. It is the music fading, the breath settling, the mind resting, the heart easing. It is the truth that nothing more needs to be added, because all is already complete. There comes a moment when silence does not merely surround you, but begins to strip away the veils you have carried for a lifetime. All the identities you stitched together from memory, expectation, culture, fear, and hope, they begin to loosen in the stillness. This is the unveiling of the self, not as a dramatic revelation, but as a gentle uncovering, like the slow lifting of dawn across a sleeping valley. You realize, perhaps for the first time, that who you are is not the masks you wear, not the stories you tell, not even the thoughts that swirl endlessly in your mind. To understand yourself in this way requires courage, for unveiling is never easy. Most people are more comfortable with their masks because masks are predictable, masks are approved, masks are safe. To say, "This is who I am," often feels less frightening when it includes the titles, roles, and labels society recognizes. But in the quiet philosophy, where silence reigns, those masks fall away, and what is left is something raw, something unshaped by others' expectations. The unveiled self is not a fixed image you discover once and for all. It is not a treasure locked in a box waiting for you to open it. It is more like a river. You uncover it in one moment and see its clarity, but tomorrow it may flow differently. The unveiling is continuous, a practice of meeting yourself again and again without clinging to what you were yesterday. This is why philosophy, at its quietest, insists on humility, because the self unveiled is never finished, never fully known, never fully captured in words. Think of the ways you have identified yourself over the years. Perhaps once you were the child of someone, then the student, then the worker, then the friend, the lover, the parent, the seeker. Each role felt real while you inhabited it. But when it passed, did it not leave you wondering who you were without it? The unveiled self sits beneath all these roles, unshaken by their comings and goings. It is the steady awareness that persists no matter what life builds on top of it. This unveiling often arrives in moments of stillness, when grief strips away pretenses, when love dissolves boundaries, when solitude forces you to sit with yourself without distraction. You may resist at first, because the unveiled self is often quieter than you expect. It does not shout, it does not demand, it simply waits, like a reflection waiting for the water to still. And when you finally see it, you realize it has been there all along, unnoticed, untouched by the noise of your life. Philosophy has long wrestled with the question of the self. Is it soul? Is it consciousness? Is it simply the body? Some traditions say there is no self at all, that what we call I is just a convenient illusion stitched together by memory and language. Others insist that the self is eternal, the core of being that survives even when everything else fades. But the unveiling is less about solving this question, and more about encountering whatever lies beneath your surface directly. It is about feeling, not defining. It is about being, not naming. Imagine standing before a mirror, not the kind that reflects your face, but one that reflects your inner life. At first you may only see the surface, the chatter of your mind, the rehearsed identities you show to others. But if you wait long enough, if you let the noise fade, the deeper image begins to appear. It is not always comfortable. It may show you the parts of yourself you avoid, your fears, your selfishness, your hidden desires. But it also shows you the quiet strength you have carried all along, the capacity for love, the patience of your breath, the resilience of your being. This is the unveiled self, both the shadow and the light, both the wound and the healing. There is freedom in this unveiling, because once you see yourself without the layers, you no longer need to defend them. You no longer need to exhaust yourself proving who you are to others. You can simply be, you can live with less fear of being misunderstood, because you no longer depend on their understanding to feel whole. The unveiled self does not demand recognition, because it is already complete in its own quiet presence. Yet this freedom also comes with responsibility. When you see yourself clearly, you also see the ways you contribute to your own suffering, the ways you hide from your truth, the ways you harm others unintentionally. To unveil the self is to accept both the beauty and the burden of awareness. It is to live awake, knowing that you cannot go back to sleep. Silence will always call you back to this unveiling, asking you to live honestly, to live gently, to live fully aware of who you are beneath the noise. And perhaps this is the final lesson of quiet philosophy. The self unveiled is not separate from silence. They are the same. The unveiled self is silence itself, watching, listening, holding everything without judgment. When you rest in that silence, you rest in yourself. When you return to that silence, you return home. So, let the unveiling be slow. Let it be gentle. Let it arrive as naturally as dawn, as calmly as dusk. Do not force it. Do not fear it. Simply sit with the silence, again and again, and allow it to lift the veils you no longer need. Each time you do, you will glimpse more of what you truly are. Not the masks, not the noise, but the still, endless presence that has always been waiting. And when the final veil falls, perhaps you will realize there was never anything hidden at all. You were the silence, the watcher, the breath, the stillness. You were already unveiled, always present, always whole. All the rest was just the noise fading away. As we come to the end of this journey through the quiet corridors of thought, the soft echoes of philosophy linger around you, like the fading glow of twilight over still waters. Each section you traversed from the inner mirror to the self unveiled was not merely a lesson but a gentle guide, a reminder that the deepest truths are often whispered, not shouted. The stillness you now feel is not an absence, but a presence, a patient companion waiting to be noticed. It does not demand your attention, it simply exists, like the breath moving softly within your chest, the subtle weight of the world pressing and releasing in rhythm with your heartbeat. You may notice how your mind, once a crowded theater of images, worries, and fleeting desires, begins to unclench. Thoughts arrive like clouds drifting across an infinite sky, observed without grasping, without attachment. You see them, but you are not them. Each memory, each longing, each fragment of regret or anticipation is now a ripple on the surface, while beneath lies the unshakable depth of being, your silent center. It is here that philosophy stops being a concept and becomes an experience. It is here that understanding is no longer an intellectual act, but a lived, breathing awareness of what it means to simply be. The breath, as always, remains your anchor. Inhale, exhale, each cycle a miniature universe, a microcosm of the flow of life itself. Notice the spaces in between, the pauses, the delicate rhythms that pass unnoticed when the mind races. Those spaces are your refuge. They are where insight comes quietly, without fanfare. They are where the self, unveiled and unhurried, resides in all its complexity and simplicity. You do not need to solve, to label, to predict. You need only to witness, to inhabit the present moment fully, gently, without resistance. Consider all the mirrors you encountered. The inner mirror reflecting your hidden fears, the gentle observer noticing the unnoticed, the silent companion accompanying you through every thought and sensation. These reflections are not mirrors in the ordinary sense. They are guides, teaching you to observe yourself without judgment, to meet your own mind with curiosity and compassion. Shadows of memory, whispers of doubt, and the soft horizon of possibilities have all played their part in revealing what is already here, a consciousness that does not cling, that does not need to explain, that simply exists. In this silence, you may sense the paradox of existence, that to know fully, you must also accept unknowing, that to find clarity, you must allow ambiguity, that to feel peace, you must embrace both joy and sorrow. The quiet path you have walked is not a destination, but a continual unfolding, a series of awakenings, small and profound. Each moment offers a choice to be lost in the noise, or to return to the calm, the listening, the aware. You have glimpsed what is possible when the mind rests, and yet, the journey never truly ends. The silence remains, ever present, ready to guide you back whenever the world feels overwhelming. Remember the gentle weight of presence, the flowing like water through thoughts, the empty chair that asked nothing of you, the open hand that only invited. All these images, all these metaphors, converge into one essential truth. You are not merely your actions, your memories, your roles, or your labels. You are the awareness that witnesses them, the stillness that holds them, the continuity beneath the impermanence. To live fully, you do not need to capture life. You need only to inhabit it, moment by moment, with honesty, patience, and quiet attention. Carry this calm forward. It need not be constant, nor must it be perfect. There will be moments when distraction, emotion, or noise pull you away. Yet now you know the path back. The breath, the mirror, the observer, the unveiled self. Each return is a meditation, each recognition a quiet victory, each pause a restoration. In time, the stillness will not only visit you but will inhabit your life more fully, shaping the way you perceive, respond, and simply exist. Now, as your attention drifts naturally, allow the teachings of this journey to settle like fine sediment in still water. Let the echoes of thought fade gently into the background. Let the quiet flame of awareness glow softly, undemanding yet persistent. You are both observer and observed, breath and body, shadow and light. The world outside may resume its motion, but within, a sanctuary has been opened, a space where silence, reflection, and presence coexist in effortless harmony. The unveiled self is not distant or unreachable. It is not a final prize or a fixed point. It is the ongoing, intimate experience of being awake, awake to your own mind, awake to your own heart, awake to the gentle rhythms of life that continue regardless of circumstance. And in this awakening, you discover that philosophy is not a library of answers but a mirror of experience, a practice of observation, a guide toward knowing without clinging. It is the art of seeing clearly while remaining tender, of listening deeply while remaining unobtrusive, of being fully alive in the present without needing to grasp it. And when you rest tonight, or in any moment of quiet, know this: all that you sought in complexity, in striving, in seeking answers, it is already here, it is always here. In silence, in awareness, in the gentle unfolding of your own consciousness, the self, unveiled and unhurried, welcomes you home. It waits for no one, demands nothing, and gives everything. In this, the journey ends and begins anew, a loop of quiet understanding, a dance of stillness and being, an eternal invitation to rest, reflect, and awaken.